Part 49. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 493. Lu Chang'an nodded. This was a matter of course. When he tore open the fish's mouth just now, he found that the fish bones in the fish were thick, and there were countless thorns, and the blood vessels were dense. It had mutated into the state, and the meat had been lost. The fish meat is so tender and delicate that it's hard to eat. Otherwise, how could such a big piece of grass carp, which has the tender meat of ordinary grass carp, be wasted like this? It's not too troublesome to carry it home. Wouldn't it be delicious to chop it into fillets, hang it on a bamboo pole and smoke it for a period of time to make cured fish? Not to mention such a big grass carp, just the fish offal hot pot can be used to treat guests to a banquet. Lu Chang'an turned around and took a closer look at the fish head he smashed. This fish head could not be used as waste. It was also impossible to make minced pepper fish head. Such a big fish head would have to have a week. So big. The moon in the sky was originally in Sunangzio's eyes, but now it turned completely white. She couldn't help but blush slightly, but thinking about the old couple, if she deliberately reminded him that he was not wearing clothes, wouldn't it be hypocritical? Wouldn't it prove that did he realize that the relationship between the two is not what it used to be? Sunangzio looked away and only looked at the dead fish on the ground. After all, she was a step too late. The research value of this fish far exceeded that of the wild boar. Why did you kill this fish? Sunangzio sighed softly, a little helpless. If her men had done this, they would have been killed by her. In just a few days, it had eaten all the fish, shrimps, and crabs in the entire lake, and then, there was nothing left for it to eat in the lake. When it became too hungry and couldn't bear it, it will leave the water to search for food. Look at its gills and the mutations in its lungs. It already has the ability to survive as an amphibious creature. This guy will eat whatever it sees, and if you don't kill it, it will affect social security. Lu Chang'an thought of this problem when the mutated grass carp rushed towards him. These guys rarely get the opportunity to mutate and evolve. Can't they be gentler? If they were better looking and gentler, Lu Chang'an would still be willing to let them live. For example, Lu Sin has now gained a very high status and honor, Zhou Dongdong's dog. Everyone saw Lu Chang'an and wanted to attack him. How could they not die? Affecting social security, Sunangzio was dumbfounded. This person actually gave such a reason. Who would care about social security? Do you still support the core values of socialism? Yes, there are beautiful female college students living carefree on campus, there are stupid children leading their dogs to and from school, there are gentle and well-behaved young women who are content to go to and from work, and there are groups of old men and women. Spending the last days of my life doing nothing in the community, life is so peaceful, and the foundation needed is good social security. Lu Chang'an thought for a while, nodded with certainty. I don't need your understanding and support. When doing these things, I don't have a very strong will or firm will, but I always feel that if I don't maintain this kind of peace, I won't be able to live a peaceful and idle life. Who is this gentle and well-behaved young woman? Sunangzio didn't care at all about his high-sounding reason that seemed to be full of warm and positive energy, but there was an important point here that she caught. Shangguandandan. Lu Chang'an is not incapable of telling lies. Sunangzio was stunned for a moment. She knew that age had no meaning to Shangguandandan, and it was even more meaningless to label Shangguandandan as a girl or an old lady based on her age. But the word young woman generally means a woman. With Shangguandandan's look like this, who would label her as a young woman? Although Shangguandandan claims to be Lu Chang'an's mother, Qinyanan actually admits this, but the young woman Shangguandandan? In Sunangzio's mind, the image of the little girl holding the sweet potato scrapings tightly with both hands and watching the excitement came to mind. Is it Qinyanan? That's right, she can be considered a young woman. Sunangzio sneered. Qinyanan's figure and appearance really showed the style of a young woman. Otherwise, a 25-year-old woman is still young. If she has not experienced the relationship between men and women, how could she be like her? She looked coquettish in every move, with a coquettish air that no amount of refined perfume could cover up. The thick lust was simply emanating from her skin and hair everywhere. Come out. It's a dark and windy night like this. You didn't come here just to be jealous, right? You've fallen in love with this fish. What are you going to do? Lu Chang'an changed the topic to avoid bringing it up to Qin Yinan. Sunangzio became unreasonable again and said some old things. This old jealousy jar has been overturned, and it is not cute at all. I want to combine the research on fish mutation with the cultivation of frogmen to improve the efficiency of frogman training and the combat capabilities of frogmen. Sunangzio sighed. There was only one mutant fish in the whole lake, and those wild boars and the like were not. Far less rare than this fish. Currently, only true military powers have top-notch frogman troops, and frogman troops have always been the special forces among special forces. During wartime, tactical formulation and strategic plans based on frogman development have always been the focus of research in the military field. Of the various legends about frogmen, the most famous one certainly belongs to the U.S. Vietnam War, when the power compartment of the USS Card aircraft carrier was exploded by frogmen. Seeing Sunanjiu, Lu Chang'an remembered the once arrogant frogman from the other side, who even ran over and planted flags in Ludi. It's just that the frogmen from the other side are training in the indoor swimming pool because it's too cold, and are responsible for performing a red pants muscle show for Nanako. And it is common for frogmen on the mainland to train in the wild at -30 degrees Celsius. This is a good idea. No matter how well humans train in the water, after all, they no longer have the developed organs and body structures suitable for survival in the water. According to your idea, you want to cultivate frogmen with amphibious survival capabilities? It is difficult for such a frogman unit to target defense. Lu Chang'an nodded in praise. That's great, come on. Sunangzia rolled her eyes at Lu Chang'an, pointed at the corpse of the mutated grass carp, and said nothing. Without such living specimens, there is no way to conduct transformation experiments as controls. It is too difficult to study mutations, so one can only expect the emergence of adaptability in randomness like natural mutations. Since you can't eat this corpse, can you give it to me? Sunangzia could only settle for the next best thing. There are no living specimens, and it cannot be said that this corpse is completely useless. In fact, it cannot be called a corpse. It has mutated. Although the grass carp's head was shattered, its body was still twisting, showing its strong vitality, or it could use a physiological function maintenance device to keep its body alive. Okay, let me help you take care of it. After saying that, Lu Chang'an slapped the grass carp's body with his palm. The force spread out, causing the entire fish's blood vessels to burst and its bones to shatter, so that it could not move around. It was convenient. Take Sunangzio away. You. Sunangzio held her forehead and took a few steps back. He must have done it on purpose. The body of this fish is quite strong. You see, it's not convenient for you to carry it, so I helped with it. As he spoke, Lu Chang'an folded a bamboo on the shore, held it with his palm and stroked it to the bottom, removing all the branches and leaves. After stroking it off, he poked a hole in the body of the fish, passed it through with the bamboo pole, and then bent it into a handle for easy lifting. Here Lu Chang'an showed a warm and honest smile. Keep it for yourself. Sunangzia was furious. This man, if she couldn't beat him, now she had to whip out the bamboo pole and beat him. I don't want it, it's not delicious. Lu Chang'an didn't mind that his kindness was not appreciated, so he threw it away, bent down and washed his hands by the lake, and then put on the clothes left by the lake. Sunangzia grabbed the bamboo next to her and adjusted her breathing rate by pressing her collar. In fact, the breathing rate did not affect her body functions and brain state, but only in this way could she calm down the bursting emotions in her chest. Back then, he often ignored her willfulness and often went against her opinions, but in the end he always made her feel his favor. He gave her a more suitable and optimized choice, instead of like now, it's definitely not for her sake, but he is on guard consciously or unconsciously. If you have the ability, you might as well kill all the mutated animals in the elephant trunk nest mountain, Sunangzia glared at Lu Chang'an. This is my mistake, and I will naturally take care of it. Lu Chang'an smiled, otherwise, what do you think I am here for? After saying that, Lu Chang'an walked towards the top of the mountain. Sunangzia hesitated and followed Lu Chang'an. Her guess was correct. Mrs. Karnstein finally fled here and relied on the last resort to contact Lu Chang'an. While Lu Chang'an rescued Mrs. Karnstein, it triggered a biological mutation event occurred in Xiangbaiwo Mountain. Fortunately, the forest park in Xiangbaiwo Mountain was originally a project of Baojun Company. After Sunangzia noticed the abnormality, he immediately sealed off the entire Xiangbaiwo Mountain area in the name of a construction project. Now the entire Xiangbaiwo Mountain periphery is blocked. It was Sun Nangzia's person, but Lu Chang'an did not break through the blockade from the ground and came here. Sun Nangzia did not come to the lakeside immediately. Forget it, it's useless to think too much. Even if I came to the lake as soon as possible, I couldn't stop Lu Chang'an. Unfortunately, I didn't investigate the situation in the lake first like Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an walked slowly in front, and did not ask her about the dispute between her and Mrs. Karnstein just because this place was Elephant Trunk Mountain. People's hearts are unpredictable. He would not equate today's Mrs. Karnstein with the showgirls of the past. Women are especially good at performing, sometimes their performances are even believed by themselves, but after the performance, their choices, their behavior conflicted with their performance, or their mood simply changed again, and their emotions were no longer what they were at that time. In stories, it is always said that men use sweet words to coax women. In fact, with rich emotional experience and meeting some women who are amazing in the performing arts, men will understand that women are the best at sweet words. If you have people around, it's best to ask them to evacuate temporarily, Lu Chang'an reminded with a smile. Sunangzia nodded and sent the message. Lu Chang'an looked back at Sunangzia. Sunangzia just looked at him, her eyes gradually became gentle, she sighed softly and then looked at the sinking moon in the west. Women are all performing artists. They use affectionate and gentle eyes, mixed with real sighing emotions, to cover up her little thoughts that may be exposed, and interfere with his inspection gaze. Excellent. You'd better do as I say. I don't want to deal with the mutant humans born tonight after I deal with the mutant animals. In fact, the ability of ordinary human bodies to withstand the side effects of mutations is far inferior to that of many common animals. Don't think too much. Lu Chang'an looked at Sunangzia coldly. Only then did Sunangzia reluctantly issue the order for her people to evacuate. She originally hoped that some of them would be able to mutate tonight. As for whether they could bear the side effects of the mutation or whether their lives would be in danger, Sunangzia doesn't really care. From a psychological perspective, there is no difference between animal experiments and human experiments. Does he really think he is a human being? Is he really on the human side? Sunangzia still couldn't believe it. As the most mysterious and powerful creature in nature, how could it be like this? Live like a human being, or is that what he's after? Sunangzia was silent. She had different ideas from him. She could no longer define herself as an ordinary person. When we reached the top of the mountain, the dense forest had blocked our view of the moon to the west. The deserted Dragon King temple still looked like its ruins, and the small temple next to it was empty. What are you going to do with those mutated creatures? Sunangzia sat on a fallen stone tablet with his hands on his knees, as if he were a young lady waiting to watch a drama. I originally thought it would be troublesome, but in fact there is not much to deal with. From the behavior of the mutant grass carp, we can infer that there are very few mutant species still alive in the entire Elephant Trunk Mountain. The big fish eat the small ones. Fish, Small fish eat shrimps, there are only a few left. Lu Chang'an turned back and glanced at Sunangziu. Your people didn't search for any mutant creatures, is this different from what you thought? Sunangziu nodded, but after Lu Chang'an found the mutated grass carp, Sunangziu also understood the reason why the huge elephant trunk mountain seemed to have become a dead place. All the way up the mountain, there was no sound of chirping birds, no trace of snakes, insects, rats, ants, nothing. This is so abnormal. I just need to summon the remaining mutated creatures. Lu Chang'an glanced at Sunangziu. Can you withstand the essence contained in my blood? Sunangziu came to her senses in a daze, and raised her head to meet Lu Chang'an's gaze. In this quiet forest, the breeze blew through the forest, bringing with him the familiar aura that seemed to have not changed in 100 years. Sunangziu's eyes, it was as if the moon in the west was sinking in her eyes, with a clear light. A blush like a pink gauze appeared on her cheeks. She bit her lips lightly. Do you need my help? What? Lu Chang'an was also stunned for a moment. Girl, where did you think you were? You don't want me to help, don't you? Would you rather use your own hands? Sunangziu was ashamed and angry. Her eyebrows, which had a cold temperament, suddenly raised. Even if she had to use her hands, she should use hers. Hand. She was still young at that time. When she first followed him, Tiankui was not on time every month, so he slowly adjusted her body. Later, when she came to Tiankui, she also learned other methods, which was so shameless. It was because he forced her to do it, and she had to do it reluctantly. I'm talking about the essence in blood, not the essence in other places. Lu Chang'an shook his head. Oh, this is it. Sunangziu brushed the hair on both sides of her face with her fingers, then put her hands back on her knees, pulled up her skirt, and said expressionlessly, you go ahead, I can't bear you, just let me die here. Okay, Lu Chang'an agreed. Sunangziu clenched her fists. No wonder she always heard Zhongqing report that Zhu Huntang was often so angry that Lu Chang'an rolled on the ground. But she soon had no time to get angry. Lu Chang'an squeezed out a drop of blood as fine as dust from his lips and tongue, and fell on the tip of his finger. I recommend a book called Eye of Evolution by the great god Ashuro. You can go out with a knife and rely on explosive equipment. Internet writer Bai Xiaoan was transported to the spiritual age 100 years later by a magical eyeball. Spirits infiltrate, mutated beasts rage, and spiritual monsters invade. The digitized earth is like a super large game. I came, I saw, I conquered. Bai Xiaoan opened his spiritual eyes and shouted the words of a strong man, but there were only 130 days before the college entrance examination. Conquering the age of psychic energy starts with becoming the top scorer in the college entrance examination. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 494. The world is so silent. It was as if all the noise was suppressed by this drop of blood as fine as dust. Sunangziu's eyes were also stained with the color of this drop of blood, and the light of a blood moon was condensed and swaying in the pupils. Sunangziu's body trembled slightly, and when she turned around, she saw that the branches in the dense forest behind her were twisting twitchingly, struggling to grow slender branches like vines. The wild dance reminded people of the dance floor in a nightclub. There are men and women with disheveled hair who look like crazy. The branches and leaves parted, and the distant moon had not completely sunk behind the mountain. In Sunangziu's eyes, the moon seemed to be stained with the color of blood, like a big red eyeball hanging in the sky. Sunangziu felt that his vision must have been disturbed, but Lu Chang'an in front of him could see his appearance clearly. He still looked calm, as if he was just doing something trivial and ordinary, looking at the blood bead in silence. Sunangziu already understood what Lu Chang'an was doing. He was using the vitality contained in this blood bead to attract those mutated creatures. These mutant creatures have not evolved wisdom. They instinctively desire to evolve again after mutation. After they come into contact with Lu Chang'an, their desire for the vitality and blood of Lu Chang'an will even make them violent and lose the keen intuition of beasts, regardless of Lu Chang'an being the master of evolution who gave them the ability to mutate. He launched an attack on him. The wild boar on the bank of the Siang River and the grass carp in the lake were all desperate to attack Lu Chang'an for the same reason, just like the monsters on the west road that smelled of Tang monk's meat. It's just that Lu Chang'an is much more difficult to deal with than Tang Seng, who has no power to restrain a chicken. Now that Lu Chang'an is taking the initiative to release blood beads containing more abundant blood energy and essence, how can those mutated creatures hold them back? Naturally, they will swarm them all, and then they will be caught in one fell swoop by Lu Chang'an. Sunangzio's mind was still awake and analyzing the problem, but when she came to her senses again, she found that her body was uncontrollably approaching Lu Chang'an, and she felt that the blood in her body seemed to be boiling and flowing crazily. As she stood, every organ in her body was extremely active and almost violent. There were spasms in her lower abdomen. Sunangzio instantly understood this instinct. This was the feeling that she, as a female, could interact with when they reproduce the next generation of males. They are instinctively ready to act. Scientific analysis may not be consistent with reality due to the lack of certain considerations, but instinct will not. Just like in the manifestation of reproductive isolation, crickets with different sounds will not have the desire to mate with each other even if they look exactly the same on the surface. She still has the female reproductive ability, and this ability is awakened at this time. This is an unprecedented feeling for Sunangzio. This was her body's instinct telling her that her theory that only a body like hers could bear the burden of reproducing offspring with Lu Chang'an was correct. That must be it. Sunangzio laughed, her laughter as sweet as the nightingale's song, but even she felt a little evil and magical under the red moon. Her body has changed. Her arms, which are as white and tender as lotus roots, have become more plump. Her slender legs are longer and filled with more fat. Her waist and hips have also become more plump. As she matured, she became astonishingly soft and elastic, and the most eye-catching thing was that her top exploded, blooming with an astonishing glare under the moonlight, as if there was only a full moon in the silent sky. Snow-capped mountains. Sunangzio was still smiling and swaying lightly. She recalled that night, which seemed to be the same situation. Her mind was clearly aware of the current situation, but her body and impulsive desires were completely out of control. Zhu Huntang's was an illusion. I didn't expect that your situation was real. Lu Chang'an remembered that Zhu Huntang once said that she had big breasts that night, and she was so heartbroken that her dream didn't come true that she almost rolled on the ground. After saying that, Lu Chang'an planned to knock Sunangzio down with a slap, but when his palm came close to her swan-like proud neck, Lu Chang'an withdrew his palm, looked around, and quickly swallowed the drop of blood. Sunangzio's charming and swaying figure stopped, staggered a few steps as if she had finally regained control of her body, and then raised her hands to block important parts of her body with red cheeks. Lu Chang'an didn't care about her anymore, because the person he really wanted to attract, charm, and make them impulsive had already appeared in his sight. A snake and a wild boar came to the two ends of the ruins of the Dragon King Temple, one on the left and one on the right. The snake is a giant snake, all white. Lu Chang'an had only thought of the white snake not long ago, but the white snake in front of him did not have the demure and elegant temperament of the white snake. The scales of the snake covered in white were still stained with blood and dirt, and the long snake body was broken. When I got up, I didn't know how many animal carcasses had accumulated waiting to be digested. The most eye-catching thing is that two gray-white horns grow out of the snake's head. In fact, snakes with long horns are not too rare in the world, but they hide in the remote mountains and forests, making it difficult for the world to catch them. Lu Chang'an sighed softly. It looked like a dragon, and he could have spared his life based on this alone. It's just that the head of the snake is too weird. The snake's eyes are not separated on both sides like ordinary reptiles, but are concentrated side by side at the front. The two rows of snake scales on the left and right of the snake's eyes are slightly darker in color, like eyebrows. The entire snake head looks like a feminine and thin woman, with an indescribable eerie feeling. As for the wild boar, it was not much different from the one Lu Chang'an killed last time, except that its mutated body was extra strong. The difference this time was that neither the snake nor the wild boar immediately attacked Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an could feel that they were wary of each other. This is a stable triangle state. The snake is wary of the pig and Lu Chang'an, the pig is wary of the snake and Lu Chang'an is wary of, no, he is not wary of any small animals. So Lu Chang'an ignored the fact that the snake and the pig thought they were in a triangle state, and rushed directly to the wild boar, punching the wild boar in the head, killing it. The huge wild boar had just fallen, and Lu Chang'an felt gusts of wind blowing from his back with a strong smell of blood. If ordinary people smelled this smell, they would probably become dizzy and vomit. Lu Chang'an moved sideways, and a black venom passed by him and landed on the wild boar. These venoms turned out to be extremely corrosive. The wild boar skin was burned and smelled bad, and then the skin split open, revealing the blood-red flesh inside. Can't eat. Snakes are extremely patient hunters who can seize the opportunity. Taking advantage of Lu Chang'an's back being exposed, this guy actually launched an attack, which was beyond Lu Chang'an's expectation. One hit missed, and the white snake swam away a few steps, raised its head, and the face that looked very much like a human female snake and scorpion actually showed an expression. It suddenly opened its mouth again and sprayed out towards Lu Chang'an. Another dose of venom. The smell was really unpleasant. Lu Chang'an dodged and the snake venom landed on a clump of thatch. The grass blades instantly corroded and turned into ashes, as if they had been burned by fire. Lu Chang'an had no interest in swimming and fighting with the snake. He teleported and disappeared on the spot. In an instant, he picked up a long stone on the ruins of the Dragon King temple, jumped behind the white snake, and suddenly inserted it between the white snake's waist and abdomen. Pierced the ground and nailed it to the ground. The white snake was severely injured and struggled desperately. The snake's head fell on the small temple next to it, causing the wall of the small temple to collapse immediately, and one of the gray-white horns on the snake's head was also broken. Lu Chang'an jumped up again and punched the snake head with a punch, smashing the whole snake head into the ground. A stream of black venom sprayed out like a fire hose, covering the entire ruins of the Dragon King temple, leaving only a smell. The fishy smell dissipated, and the ground was covered with signs of burning and corrosion. The snake's body twitched a few times and then stopped moving. Lu Chang'an looked at the snake's bulging belly and didn't know how many birds and animals it had eaten in the Elephant Trunk Nest Mountain. After all, he couldn't hold back anymore. The greed for life and blood ultimately leads to death. This scene is no different from the battles he has faced with various strange creatures for many years, or even since the emergence of human beings. Mutated snakes, mutated wild boars, simian creatures that looked like ferns and were actually animals, and the later Tyrannosaurus rex, Siberian elasmodon, and megalodon that came to trouble him. Sharks are no different. As for the snake, compared with the titanoboa long ago, its physical strength and combat effectiveness are still a little far behind, but this snake's venom is more powerful. But if you encounter a mosasaurus, this snake venom will probably be useless. People nowadays don't know the true combat power of mosasaurs. They can only talk about it in general terms, that it is a creature that can drive away dinosaurs. In fact, the top predator Mosasaurus evolved from a very inconspicuous small lizard on land, the cliff lizard. How small lizards of tens of centimeters evolved into behemoths of tens of meters in size has always been a difficult mystery in the history of biological evolution. This kind of small lizards were almost wiped out by dinosaurs on the shore, until their last group entrenched themselves near a coast. When they were barely surviving, they encountered a mysterious and powerful strange creature that looked like the same kind. These cute little lizards became followers of this strange creature, following it to live on the coast, avoiding the predation of land dinosaurs, and learning with the ability to survive in water, they eventually evolved into mosasaurs, the world overlords that slaughtered dinosaurs. Lu Chang'an went to take a look at the wild boar. As expected, the snake venom was extremely overbearing. After corroding the wild boar's skin, it also penetrated into the flesh and blood, making every part of the whole wild boar exude a fishy and sour smell, making it completely inedible. As for this snake, there was no way to eat it. Lu Chang'an was not someone who always considered whether the other party could eat it or whether it was delicious, so he didn't think too much about regrettable things like snake soup. Lu Chang'an clapped his hands and turned to look at Sunangziu. Although he had not been cleaning up the snakes and wild boars for a long time, it was obviously abnormal for her to remain silent. Logically speaking, she should be heartbroken. Why didn't Lu Chang'an leave her a living standard? Sunangziu lay on the ground. Zhu Huntang was knocked unconscious by Lu Chang'an back then, but now Sunangziu seemed to have fainted on her own. The moonlight has long since sunk in the west of the foothills. Only Sunangziu's body seems to be shining white, so eye-catching in the dark night. Her body is scattered with damaged clothes, which were caused by her body change just now. Now her body has returned to its original slender and delicate appearance, and is so light that it feels like you are holding a long pillow when you hold her in your arms. Hello, Lu Chang'an patted Sunangziu's cheek. There was no response or movement, so Lu Chang'an stretched out his fingers to press her neck to test her blood vessels and heart condition. Could it be the sequelae of his body being stimulated by his blood and essence? Lu Chang'an had been worried about whether she could bear it, so this situation was not unexpected. Sunangziu now has Mrs. Karnstein's ability, but it does not mean that she can withstand Lu Chang'an's blood. Mrs. Karnstein was in a dying state that night, equivalent to an almost completely empty container. Lu Chang'an's the blood filled her body, allowing Mrs. Karnstein to draw and absorb the essence in the blood to recover. However, Sunangziu was in a normal state, neither injured nor in an empty bottle state. How could he withstand the blood and essence that he spurted out? Not only did his body appear abnormal, he was mentally excited, and even now he was unconscious. Lu Chang'an didn't hesitate, and didn't think too much. He pulled the damaged clothes on Sunangziu's body. Her lake green jacket and skirt were made from Ming Dynasty and used more materials. Even if they were damaged, they covered her current. There is nothing wrong with my small body. Lu Chang'an picked up Sunangziu, and before the morning light came, he jumped all the way from Xiangbaiwo Mountain, crossed the Xiangjiang River, from Hexi to Hedong, jumped up from Du Fujiang Pavilion and landed on the rooftop of Junyu, until he came to the roof of Building 1 of Beilong Center. Lu Chang'an placed Sunangziu on the sofa and lounge chair next to Zhu Huntang's swimming pool. The household items used by Miss Zhu were always particularly exquisite and luxurious. The hand rests on the lounge chair were also made of fine ostrich skin. It was just a bit ugly. As for Zhu Huntang seeing Sunangziu lying here, and how Sunangziu explained to Zhu Huntang, that is not Lu Chang'an's concern. He sent her to her family just following the behavioral standards of ordinary good people. He has tried his best. When Lu Chang'an returned to Lushan Mountain, the guest room and bedroom were quiet. He looked at his mobile phone and found that it was still on the sofa. There was no trace of movement. Lu Chang'an knew it and didn't bother to report his whereabouts. Remembering that Qinyan and Nuan had soaked in the hot springs last night, while they were still sleeping soundly, Lu Chang'an also wanted to enjoy it. Although it was not as exciting as the hot spring bath when the underwater volcano erupted, but it was still comfortable, wasn't it? So Lu Chang'an opened the door and walked in. Please give me some monthly votes and recommendation votes. It's fine if you don't give them. Thank you. Anyway, as long as you subscribe, everyone can say, you tried your best. I recommend a book called The Devil is Around You. Chen Zhao can summon demons and see death. Beelzebub, use your gluttony ability to treat this client's anorexia. Raymond, this old man wants to regain his male powers, you know. Old hey, tell me the truth, when will this person die, how will he die, what? You don't know, you are the god of death. That girl needs a breast enlargement, beauty and slimming package. Wait, I don't seem to have these demons with subordinate abilities around me yet. It seems that I still need to go to hell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Siahua. Chapter 495. Lu Chang'an walked out again. In fact, there is nothing good to soak in the hot spring, it is just soaking the body with the hot water. This is actually a remnant of a lower instinct. When the earliest life forms appeared in the ocean, the temperature of the sea water was higher than it is now. There were even volcanoes in many places, and magma cracks were creating a hot spring effect, so primitive life was already accustomed to the feeling of bathing in hot springs all the time. Human beings today like to soak in hot springs, but it is just a primitive habit left in the process of evolution. Of course, a living body as advanced as Lu Chang'an had to get rid of this primitive residue, so he gave up soaking in hot springs based on this. Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an turned around and saw Qinyanan walking out of the hot spring room. I'm going to say that I was blind just now, would you believe it? Lu Chang'an looked at Qinyanan expectantly. What do you think? Qinyanan's cheeks turned red, as if Lu Chang'an's spicy sauce was stained on the woman's fingers and smeared on her lips after autumn. The color was bright and spicy. Qinyanan tightly grabbed the bath towel wrapped around her body. Her mind went blank just now, and she chased him out without thinking. She only regretted it now. Why did she chase him out? Question him. What's the point of pointing a finger at him and looking angry? He looked away at a woman at her most embarrassing moment, but he still chased after her. Wasn't this because she felt that she was not embarrassed enough? A while ago, there was a guy named Wu Fan. He believed that I was a blind man, and I even showed him my face. Lu Chang'an thought for a while and said. Your eyes were so wide just now, do you think I will believe that you are a blind man? Qinyanan said angrily. At this time, he needed momentum to cover up his true feelings of embarrassment and shame. Why didn't you knock on the door? Then why didn't you lock the door? Lu Chang'an asked. I don't have that habit in my own family. Then don't stay with friends of the opposite sex casually in the future. Of course I won't, you. Oh, it's not a big deal. Lu Chang'an became impatient. Isn't it just self-blasphemy? It's not a big deal. Hearing that he actually said it, Qinyanan felt like the blood was boiling all over his body, and the roots of his ears were so hot that it seemed to burn the tender skin. She didn't want to do it at all. It was just an abnormality in her body that caused her glandular secretion to be disordered, prompting her to do such a shameful thing. In fact, she didn't want to do it at all. It's not me at all, it was Yesijin just now, it was Yesijin who did it. Qinyanan suddenly became wise, her cheeks bulged, and her eyes widened. If he didn't cooperate with her, she would blame Yesijin for this matter. She would wait. Just jump off the building. Okay, it was Jinner who did it, not Miss Zionan. Lu Chang'an nodded casually. That's it. Qinyanan paused for a moment and looked at Lu Chang'an suspiciously, wondering if he sincerely believed this. He certainly doesn't believe it. Qinyanan still felt shameless and skinless. The shame of the wealthy daughter of a famous family was completely peeled off, exposing the pink private parts inside to him. Anyway, whether you believe it or not, if I say it was Yesijin who did it, it was Yesijin who did it. Qinyanan emphasized again. Lu Chang'an nodded and said nothing else, lest she dwell on it again. It was Yesijin who did it? I'm Miss Zionan. Qinyanan muttered, turned around and ran back to the hot spring room with her face covered. Lu Chang'an put on his slippers and washed his feet, then lay down on the sofa and went to sleep. In fact, This kind of thing is really rare and common. Who hasn't done it 10,000 or 8,000 times in his life? This is a daily behavior just like eating, sleeping and breathing. It seems a little hot in the room right now. Lu Chang'an washed his face again, opened a bottle of sparkling water at the water bar, added some crushed ice and drank it in one gulp. After reciting Spring River with Flowers and Moonlight Night for a while, Lu Chang'an naturally fell asleep quietly. When he woke up in the morning, Lu Chang'an could smell the smell of the woods, the fresh air brought by the breeze, and a subtle fragrance mixed in it. This kind of fragrance is somewhat sultry and very familiar. The window is opened, and the thin sound is that someone is fixing the position of the window. She stands there slightly on tiptoe. The girl's delicate and slender back is infinitely beautiful. Lu Chang'an opened his eyes, stretched his legs and feet, held the back of his head with his hands and looked at En Nuan's back. En Nuan turned around and saw that he had secretly woken up, so she smiled mischievously. The morning light shone in from the window and passed through her eyelashes one by one. Her bright and clear eyes were shining with brilliance. The focus fell on Lu Chang'an's face, then he pursed his lips, jumped over on tiptoes, and suddenly screamed and threw himself on Lu Chang'an. "Hold on! Let go again!" Before Lu Chang'an could kiss her, he giggled and ran away. Lu Chang'an smiled, lifted the quilt and sat up, turned on the TV and watched the morning news. En Nuan was talking in the room. Teacher Qin went to school early in the morning, and she asked us to prepare breakfast ourselves. "You, make breakfast this morning," Lu Chang'an directed. En Nuan ran out with a toothbrush and a mouthwash cup in hand, as if she had discovered something. "I understand, I usually take the initiative to make breakfast at home to show off in front of my mother. Now you are instructing me to make breakfast." "Certainly." En Nuan was stunned for a moment, then went back with the toothbrush and quilt. After Lu Chang'an washed up, En Nuan was busy in the kitchen, and suddenly realized when he opened Qin Yinan's refrigerator. "Your cousin took the opportunity to attack me again," En Nuan quickly ran out to complain. "What's wrong?" Lu Chang'an was thinking about sitting in the living room and watching TV, and then waiting for En Nuan to prepare breakfast and deliver it. She knew that she couldn't be busy working in the kitchen alone. It was normal to find Lu Chang'an every 3 minutes. Not long after she entered the kitchen, something happened again. "Come quickly." Women are like this. They can say something directly without saying anything, but have to call someone over. It seems that only by speaking clearly can they express her momentum more easily. Lu Chang'an walked into the kitchen, and En Nuan pointed at the refrigerator with bulging cheeks, as if a salty rice dumpling eater had discovered that the owner had deliberately prepared all the sweet rice dumplings in the refrigerator. Lu Chang'an took a look and saw that Qin Yinan had prepared marinated steaks, Korean cold noodles with ingredients, defrosted instant steamed buns, stir-fried dumplings, prepared bone soup, portioned rice noodles and yogurt and milk. There were also 2 fruit salads, 2 boiled eggs and 2 fried eggs. "What's wrong? Why were you hit again?" Lu Chang'an didn't understand. If she didn't prepare anything and just asked you to make breakfast from scratch, then that would be called a hit on you. She is showing her ability as a housewife. She is using these foods to express a meaning. "Anyuan, you trash, I haven't prepared so many ingredients, how many kinds of breakfast can you make for me?" Lu Chang'an eats it. "The best you can do is take out the frozen buns from the refrigerator and steam them," En Nuan pointed at the food in front of her. When she opened the refrigerator just now, the food was clamoring for the first place and said these words. I don't think this is what she meant. "This is your self-knowledge, which is good." Lu Chang'an nodded in agreement. "You are indeed rubbish when it comes to making breakfast. You scold me. Otherwise, why should I praise you? You're just looking for trouble. You don't understand. If she is a normal hostess, she only needs to prepare 1 or 2 breakfasts. She has prepared so many kinds just to show off her ability," En Nuan said angrily. "Okay, if you have the ability, you can fight back next time. Just asking me to act like a baby doesn't prove that you are trash. Lu Chang'an patted An Nuan's little volleyball. Hurry up and make breakfast. You were on the volleyball team yesterday. I didn't go to the training camp. Today is the physical fitness test for the reserve team members. You are going to be beaten again. Are you worthy of me? Only then did An Nuan remember the business. She didn't care that these ingredients were used by Qinyanan to mock her, and she didn't think about using other ingredients to prove herself. She hurriedly started working in the kitchen. Lu Chang'an didn't help her and went to the living room to watch TV, even though he knew that if he did it himself, it would be a delicious breakfast. Breakfast is still edible. Although Lu Chang'an said that An Nuan's breakfast-making ability is rubbish, it does not mean that in his eyes, the breakfast she makes is also rubbish. He finished eating them all, and An Nuan was very happy, and she also understood the truth. It didn't mean that he needed her to be delicious or good at it. He didn't ask her to be a perfect and excellent girlfriend in any aspect. After breakfast, An Nuan changed her clothes and went home. She also had to prepare. The physical fitness test was just a trivial matter. Lu Chang'an did not need to be with him for all the big and small things like a nanny. An Nuan liked to act coquettishly, but she was capable and had a good attitude. Deal with the things she needs to face seriously. Lu Chang'an had classes in the afternoon, so he went back. As soon as he walked into the community, he saw Shang Guandandan sitting under the grapevine and starting to play cards, and two young people were asking questions. "Sweetie, we received a report that someone was selling wild boar meat in your community. What kind of thing is this?" Old man Qian grabbed the cards in his hand and said expressionlessly, "Who's to blame? Something's happened. Many people have bought wild boar, Lao Nai. If you raise wild boar, you must follow the procedures. If it is a poached wild boar, this is an illegal act. If you know anything, you must report it. Don't mess with Hong Kong. We are a civilized community here, do you know that?" Mrs. Lu, who was sitting opposite old man Qian, shouted loudly. "Do you have evidence? You risk the evidence. Don't interfere with our entertainment activities here. I haven't seen a wild boar in decades. You're still selling wild boar meat, and I'm reporting you for selling human flesh." "Zhao Yao, don't speak so eloquently." The two young men from the Forestry Bureau obviously couldn't deal with these old people. Seeing them talking nonsense, there was nothing they could do. However, they noticed the man who was sitting upright with his cards tightly held. He looked like he should be a little nervous girl. "I recommend a book called Summoning the Nightmare by a Great Master. Go away. This author's name is a guarantee. I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 496. Shang Guandandan picked up a good hand of cards, which was the one that allowed her to win the most money since she started playing cards. As long as old man Qian plays that card, she can do whatever she wants. You can win at least 20 yuan with one hand, and you can buy a lot of effervescent tablets in Anxie's store. And he can take revenge on this little old man by saying he wants to win her thermos bottle. Just now, old man Qian was about to play that card, but two people came and asked questions, and old man Qian took it back. He said a few words, took it out again, but started to quarrel again and took it back again. Shang Guandandan's heart was pounding nervously. Should you fight or not? She stared at old man Qian's hand, but old man Qian didn't pay attention to his words at this time. He was talking proudly about how he killed the wild boar king. "Go away, we are about to play cards." "Was it me who played the cards?" After finishing speaking, old man Qian waved his hand and looked at the scene and his subordinate Shang Guandandan, a little suspicious. Shang Guandandan quickly touched his favorite thermos pot beside him and acted as if nothing had happened to calm old man Qian's suspicion. "By the way, I can't be nervous now, I have to be as calm and composed as when I went to court. Because Lu Chang'an wanted to work by herself, Shang Guandandan didn't play cards yesterday and saved 50 yuan in pocket money. Including today's, she now has a total of 100 yuan. She is full of confidence and will not leave the thermos bottle. If you lose, you keep it with you. Slow down. I'll check the cards. Old man Qian took the cards back again, fiddled with them on the table, and made some calculations. Hurry up. Playing cards is so slow. Set off the cannons. Old man Qian waved his hand. He always felt that his card was a bit dangerous. Forget it, just play it casually. He had just started playing and he had to have enough momentum, so he threw the card away. Old man Qian looked at Shang Guandandan warily, and found that the little girl took a look at the cards he played, and then touched her precious thermos. He slowly let go of the cards with his fingers, felt relieved, and began to urge, "Fight, fight, do you want it?" What a fool! Shang Guandandan took back the cards played by old man Qian, and then spread out his own cards. "You're a big bearded man, I'll punish you with a cannon." Old man Qian looked at Shang Guandandan's cards in disbelief. He turned over them with his eyes wide open and couldn't find any problem. He did some calculations unwillingly and found that he would lose at least 20 yuan this time. He was immediately shocked. Angry, he picked up the teapot and hit the two young men. "You are looking for trouble. If you hadn't made trouble here, I would have set off the fire." The two young men were chased and beaten, but they did not dare to fight back. The little girl did not ask any questions and hurriedly ran out of the community. Wild boars, although they are protected animals, are not cherished that much. There are many of them bred, and when they are dangerous, they will organize hunting. I really don't want to investigate anything carefully. I just entered the unit and saw someone taking a WeChat screenshot to report it. Looking for something to do? Unexpectedly, he was beaten and chased by an old man who doused him with hot tea. "Don't let me see you again," old man Qian chased him angrily. He planned to pretend to chase someone, and then take the opportunity to go home, so that he could forget about the fight just now, but when he saw Lu Chang'an walking over, he had to cough and go back. Otherwise Lu Chang'an walked under the grapevine and said that he saw Qian Sui ran away. Wouldn't it be very shameful? There is a completely difference between being caught on the spot and being ridiculed afterwards. "Let's play cards," Lu Chang'an said with a smile. Playing cards? Old man Qian nodded lightly. "Your eggs made a fortune today." Because Zhou Dongdong always calls Shang Guandandan egg sister, some old men and women call Shang Guandandan egg or egg. As for the word dan dan, who recognizes it? It doesn't sound like there's any difference anyway. Lu Chang'an and old man Qian walked back, and old man Qian sat down to continue. Shang Guandandan saw Lu Chang'an, raised his thermos, and reminded Lu Chang'an with some pride, "Dongdong mother made me meat buns to eat." Shang Guandandan just looked at her in Zhou Shuling's eyes and ate meat buns this morning. Although Zhou Shuling may not have understood Shang Guandandan's meaning from her eyes, she finally fulfilled Shang Guandandan's needs. But as for Lu Chang'an, Shang Guandandan was holding a thermos bottle in front of him every day. He didn't know how to be considerate, and he always wanted Shang Guandandan to work. Lu Chang'an nodded to express his understanding, and then listened to the old men and women telling stories about their outsmarting the government. Old men and women call civil servants government. Lu Chang'an watched them play cards here and then went back. He looked at the orange peels in the stove and added some more. He looked at the roasted pig blood meatballs and smelled the aroma. He was very satisfied because those wild boar's blood is actually the most important part. In addition to nutrition, it is more important to make food taste naturally sweet. After the pork blood meatballs are smoked and grilled, they should be washed before eating, sliced and steamed, and then stir-fried with chili and garlic, or simply combined with bacon and sausage to make a 3-steamed bacon, which is also an extremely delicious way to eat. After covering the pig blood meatballs with newspaper again and continuing to smoke them, Lu Sin came back huffing and puffing with his tongue hanging out after seeing off Zhou Dongdong. When he saw Lu Chang'an, he lay down in front of him, raised his head and stared sincerely with watery eyes. By Lu Chang'an. Don't worry, you are also one of the guardians of the Holy Lady of the Nine Provinces Fenglai Sword Section. There is a sheep guardian and a dog guardian. Lu Chang'an touched Lu Xin's dog's head. The dog was enthusiastic about Zhou Dongdong and respected Lu Chang'an. No anyone who dared to rush over and lick Lu Chang'an's hands, face, or at least his shoes. Lu Sin suddenly made a om. Om. Om sound like the low roar of a supercar engine. It seemed that Zhou Dongdong had never taught Lu Sin how to make a ouch, oh sound. Lu Chang'an went to get some wild boar lungs, chopped them into slices, added some rice and mixed them together to make dog food and fed it to Lu Sin. To be honest, Lu Sin did a lot of work. Not only did he pick up and drop off Zhou Dongdong every day, but he also brought a wild boar back that day. He also helped Zhou Dongdong drag the wild boar's legs upstairs. In this regard, the labor he put in was far more than Shang Guandandan, who entered the room with a kitchen knife and waited until the third day to show up. Lu Chang'an was sitting and watching Lu Sin eating dog food with great relish. At this time, Shang Guandandan came back. She was holding 2 effervescent tablets and a thermos bottle bought at Aunt Xia's canteen. I won money. I bought 2 chocolate candies. Please have one. Shang Guandandan took out a planet cup from his sleeve pocket and handed it to Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an took it and asked, by the way, where are my sweet potato scrapers? Shang Guandandan's figure stagnated, then he walked slowly to the door of the utility room, looked back at Lu Chang'an, then opened the door and walked in, then turned around and looked at Lu Chang'an again through the crack in the door, and then nodded again. He closed the door little by little. What do you mean? Lu Chang'an suspected that she was autistic again, so he quickly walked over and knocked on the door. After a while, Lu Chang'an went back and sat down. After watching Lu Sin finish eating the dog food, Shang Guandandan walked out holding 4 sweet potato slices. She walked up to Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an reached out to take it, but found that she held it tightly and refused to let go, but looked at Lu Chang'an with complicated eyes. How come the look in your eyes now is exactly the same as the look in your eyes when I first came to Chang'an and accepted your edict? Lu Chang'an didn't understand very much. One is the inheritance of the crown prince's status, and the other is the scraping of 4 sweet potatoes. Let's take half each, okay, Shang Guandandan suggested expectantly. Lu Chang'an looked at her in confusion. Now there are 4 slices in total. Each of us will take half, 2 slices for you and 2 for me, Shang Guandandan suggested repeatedly, holding the sweet potato scraper tightly. Lu Chang'an shook his head. Why don't you share 2 pieces with me? I just bought 2 chocolate candies, and I gave half of them to you, Shang Guandandan reasoned with Lu Chang'an confidently. Since she bought 2 chocolate candies, she should share them with him. 1. Why can't I give him half of his sweet potato scrapings? Lu Chang'an pursed her lips and felt the sweet taste of the planet cup on her tongue. It turned out that she had come prepared. As expected of the Queen Mother, Lu Chang'an was tricked by this trick. It turns out that not everyone is like Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong shared her candies with brother Chang'an, but he had never plotted against him like this. Have you finished eating all your own? Lu Chang'an is a reasonable person. Zhou Dongdong ate 2 pieces of me. Lu Chang'an nodded and took the 2 sweet potato slices handed over by the delighted Shang Guandandan. He couldn't help but show a thoughtful expression. It was clear that there were originally 10 pieces, and half for each person was 5 pieces. But now, he only has 2 pieces. I recommend a book called The Great Era 1994. A real estate developer with a fortune is unexpectedly reborn in 1994. In this exciting era, Xiangbei's who rises among the grass, and he has read all the youth in the world. He has sailed through thousands of sails, but he still retains his true character as a hero. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 497. Shang Guandandan put his 2 sweet potato slices back into the room and sat in front of the small stove to boil hot water. Lu Chang'an always thought that it was wrong for her not to do housework. Shang Guandandan opened the lid of the pot and watched the hot water gurgling. She remembered that when Lu Chang'an was telling her about several social and class issues caused by scientific progress and the revolutionary increase in productivity, he mentioned a man named Wat, who was using the principle of gurgling hot water invented a very powerful mechanism. Shang Guandandan watched the hot water gurgling for a while, and thought of something terrible, so he filled the thermos with water and put the effervescent tablets in it. She used to only take 1 effervescent tablet, but now she had more than 100 yuan, so she took 2. Shang Guandandan walked out and saw Lu Chang'an still sitting under the sycamore tree. Lu Sin had finished eating the dog food and was lying on the ground with his belly turned over. Lu Chang'an put his feet on the dog's belly and stepped on it, rolling on the left and rolling on the right. Just place your feet gently, no cruelty to the dog. Shang Guandandan took a cup, poured a cup of effervescent water and said to Lu Chang'an, "Do you want to drink it? I put 2 effervescent tablets in it, it will be better." Lu Chang'an was reading En Nuan's message and nodded casually. En Nuan took some videos of the physical fitness test and sent them to him, saying they were for him to admire the long-legged girls on the volleyball team. Xiongnan University is a strong school in volleyball, and the girls on the women's team will definitely crush the high school women's volleyball team of the high school affiliated to Hunan University in terms of strength, but when it comes to looks and figure, they may not be better than the high school team. Shang Guandandan handed over the cup, and Lu Chang'an took it casually and took a sip. It was like Fanta diluted with hot water, but it was finally a little sweet. When Shang Guandandan saw Lu Chang'an drinking her effervescent water, he naturally reached out and took a scraper that Lu Chang'an had put aside, then held it with both hands and started chewing it. Lu Chang'an noticed her movement, and he didn't snatch it back rudely. He just looked at her calmly. "Why are you eating from me again? I gave you my effervescent water. If you also have something delicious, can't you share half of it with me?" Of course Shang Guandandan had his own reasons. Lu Chang'an looked at the remaining piece of scraping. Just a short while ago, he felt that it was unacceptable that he only had 2 pieces. At that time, he never thought that now he would only have the last piece left. Lu Chang'an was not a stingy person. He took a deep breath and did not intend to argue with the Queen Mother who had no way to participate in the palace fight, so he devoted all his efforts to planning to snatch his sweet potato slices. He picked up the remaining piece and stuffed it into his mouth. You can eat slowly, tear it in half, and eat half a piece at a time, so that you can eat it for a while. Shang Guandandan held his sweet potato slices tightly and looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly, hoping that he would take his suggestion. Go ahead and dream, Lu Chang'an would no longer be tricked by her. In the past, he would reason with others and then trick them. Shang Guandandan was a little sad that he was so cruel to her, so she pushed her thermos under Lu Chang'an's nose. Lu Chang'an ignored her and quickly ate the last sweet potato slice before talking. Shang Guandandan also speeded up, otherwise, what if he finished eating first and wanted to take half of her share? So Lu Chang'an and Shang Guandandan finished eating together. When Lu Chang'an saw her lips barely closing together and trying to look normal, he knew that her mouth was filled with sweet potatoes that she had bitten but not had time to swallow. Blade. Lu Chang'an stretched out 2 fingers and pinched Shang Guandandan's cheek. Her lips suddenly opened like a fish's mouth. Lu Chang'an took a look and saw that it was indeed a mouthful of sweet potato slices. Shang Guandandan glared at Lu Chang'an. If he hadn't been controlled by the sweet potato scraper, he would have scolded him a lot. Lu Chang'an let go of her cheek, sat down again, and began to think about what to eat for lunch. The main thing was to eat wild boar. The key was which part to eat and how to eat it. At this time, 2 unexpected people walked into the community, paused under the grape trellis, and then walked straight to the sycamore tree. It turned out to be Gao Qunyi and Wang Yubo. Gao Qunyi is Gao Dui's cousin. He once visited the thatched cottage 3 times to ask Lu Chang'an and Pu Shaogeng to compete. Wang Yubo was the senior brother Gao Qunyi brought when he came to ask Lu Chang'an for the last time. Lu Chang'an kicked him into the sycamore tree and was admitted to the hospital. Before Pu Shaogen's martial arts school closed down, they were Pu Shaogen's first and second disciples. Lu Chang'an crossed his legs on the recliner. Even though it was getting colder in this autumn day, the weather with the warm sun and high sun was exactly what the so-called high autumn air was, and it was very comfortable. He was too lazy to say anything, and just squinted at the 2 men who came with unknown intentions. People. Lu Chang'an could see clearly that Gao Qunyi and Wang Yubo were not the same people, so he didn't know why the 2 came together again after Pu Shaogen's martial arts gym closed down, or why they came to Lu Chang'an together. Brother Lu. Gao Qunyi clenched his fist and cupped his hand, then bumped into Wang Yubo, who was in a daze. Wang Yubo was looking at Shang Guandandan. For such a beautiful girl, it was very difficult not to notice her. Generally speaking, it was not surprising to look at her for several minutes. Wang Yubo came back to his senses, hesitated for a moment, and like Gao Qunyi, he cupped his hands and clenched his fists, lowered his head and gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Lu, what happened last time was that I was too reckless, stupid, and too angry. I need to be taught a lesson by Brother Lu. I have learned from the pain and reflected on it for a long time. Today I came here to apologize. I made a reservation at Zuji at noon and asked Brother Lu to show me his favor." Lu Chang'an ignored Wang Yubo and just looked at Gao Qunyi. "Brother Lu, show me your face," Gao Qunyi said sincerely, and then involuntarily turned his head and glanced at Shang Guandandan. Because the beautiful girl next to him, staring at people with wide eyes without saying a word, easily reminded Gao Qunyi of the child he saw when he invited Lu Chang'an to a martial arts competition, who was also sitting on this phoenix tree. Under the tree, they stared at him without saying a word. None of them are mute, Gao Qunyi can be sure of this. They just think of themselves as bad people, right? Gao Qunyi looked hot and embarrassed. "Just tell me if you have anything to say." It's always relatively easy to invite Lu Chang'an to a meal, but that doesn't mean that he can be invited over a casual meal. Everything happens, but eating is the way to eat. I'll talk about the matter first. Regardless of whether Brother Lu agrees or not, I'll give you a favor later, Gao Qunyi said. "You say?" "It's like this. Our master has disappeared, the martial arts school has also closed down. Many brothers and sisters are at a loss what to do and have just dispersed. My brothers and I feel that the martial arts school can still be run. We plan to revive the fallen brand." "Put it up again," Gao Qunyi said seriously. After hearing these words, Lu Chang'an was sure that Gao Dui's cousin had a good heart, but was too naive. It's also a matter of family education. Many parents want to teach their children to be good people, but it's difficult to teach them how to recognize people's hearts. Not everyone is good at it, and some people are inherently straightforward. It is easier to be fooled. Gao Qunyi didn't understand that nature is hard to change. He only thought that Wang Yubo was sincerely apologizing, so he thought he could give Wang Yubo a chance. It's up to him to think so, but Lu Chang'an doesn't think so. If you do it by yourself, I don't think there is a problem. You partner with your senior brother, and when you make some achievements and the sign is put up again, your senior brother will be the next Pu Shaogeng. Lu Chang'an pointed at Wang Yubo and said. Gao Qunyi was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Lu Chang'an's view of Wang Yubo had not changed at all. Wang Yubo came to Gao Qunyi every day these days and kept talking about the time when his brothers practiced martial arts together. He said that the martial arts hall cannot be ruined like this. Gao Qunyi he was persuaded by Wang Yubo. Although Gao Qunyi felt that Wang Yubo was too violent, he couldn't deny him a chance. After all, He had been a senior brother for more than 10 years. "Brother Lu, you can't be so arbitrary, can you? No one can make mistakes without being a sage. Knowing your mistakes can make a lot of improvements." Killing someone with a stick and not giving anyone a chance, Wang Yubo clenched his fists and calmed down and said. "Many times, it's just because we don't have a stick to kill that we have endless troubles." Lu Chang'an smiled. "How can you give such a good opportunity to others casually, especially you?" "Okay. Lu Chang'an, don't think that because you are good at martial arts, I have to beg you." Wang Yubo snorted coldly, turned around and left directly. "Senior brother, alas." Gao Qunyi shouted twice, helpless, but did not catch up. Lu Chang'an patted Lucine's dog's head, then turned to look at Gao Qunyi. "Tell me, what's going on?" It was more comfortable in ancient times, and monks who could fly into the sky and escape from the earth were mostly admired by the secular people. Unlike now, monks who want to practice Taoism and live forever must also promote righteousness and establish new trends, and are required to embark on a socialist monastic path with Chinese characteristics. The author of The First Sword on Earth gets back to his business and writes about a sword cultivator who kills evil spirits and slays evil spirits, fights 100 battles without giving up, and makes his sword roar across the galaxy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 498. Gao Qunyi took out a folded piece of paper from his pocket, spread it out and handed it to Lu Chang'an. The font is elegant and in small regular script. It is rare these days to be able to write so many words seriously and neatly, instead of just printing out a long article. But unlike Gao Qunyi's handwriting, the direction and force of this stroke were more like a girl's handwriting, so Lu Chang'an looked at Gao Qunyi. "My girlfriend helped write the plan," Gao Qunyi explained. "Do you have a girlfriend?" "That time when I came to your place, I went back to ride my bicycle and splashed her with water. At that time, I said I would pay for her laundry fee, but she didn't ask for it. Later, when I was hospitalized, I didn't expect that she was a nurse in that hospital," Gao Qunyi said with some embarrassment. "It's fate," Lu Chang'an nodded. "It all depends on you. I'm going to hurt you and put you in the hospital." Gao Qunyi laughed and nodded. "Silly." After Lu Chang'an read the plan, the core content was that Gao Qunyi was Pu Shaojian's apprentice. This was not a label that could be erased just because the martial arts school was disbanded and Pu Shaojian disappeared. Now that Pu Shaojian's reputation has been tarnished and Ma Benwei broadcast Lu Chang'an's kick, the mainstream public opinion on the internet naturally regards Pu Shaojian as a clown to discuss and make fun of him. There are many videos of various ghosts and animals pranking him. Gao Qunyi wants to regain a foothold in the martial arts circle in southern Hunan and open a martial arts gym. The negative impact of public opinion is very large. To untie the bell, he must also tie the bell. If he can invite Lu Chang'an to join the gym as a coach, consultant, or even just a name, he can get twice the result with half the effort and eliminate the negative impact of the Pu Shaojian label on Gao Qunyi. Otherwise, when others mention it, the master of the martial arts gym is the apprentice of Pu Shaojian who was kicked out by a high school student. Who would come to Gao Qunyi's martial arts gym? Okay, I'll put my name on it. As for the salary, there's no need for it. Our previous rules were just in name. The more sophisticated martial artists didn't receive a salary. You just need to get some chicken, duck, fish, meat, and seasonal fruits during the holidays. Lu Chang'an nodded. Of course, a martial artist with such a name will not come forward if something happens to the martial arts school. If there is a problem with the gym, he has no obligation to come forward. You have to deal with it yourself. It's okay if you just name it, but you still have to get your monthly salary. How about I give you a share? Gao Qunyi said happily. He didn't expect Lu Chang'an to be so easy to talk to. He was completely different from when he asked him to help the Wuotong tree. See, as expected, you shouldn't mention it to him if you came here to do what you wanted to do in the first place. Such people are very principled. If you don't agree, you won't agree. If you are willing to help, you don't need to be nagging him. Just do whatever I say. Lu Chang'an handed the plan back. Gao Qunyi didn't dare to talk nonsense anymore. The man in front of him was sitting under the sycamore tree. He had an extraordinary bearing and had the power of a master. Otherwise, how could Gao Qunyi know his age and still say, "Brother Lu, I don't need you to treat me to a meal. Go back. If I need to shoot posters or other promotional materials, please say hello to me in advance." Lu Chang'an feels that he is quite photogenic. Every time he is broadcast live, people praise him for his handsomeness. "Okay, thank you." Gao Qunyi said nothing nonsense, cupped his hands and left. Lu Chang'an watched Gao Qunyi leave, stood up and prepared to make lunch, then looked down at Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan also glanced at Lu Chang'an and shook his head. He hadn't finished eating the sweet potato slices yet, so he couldn't work or talk. Lu Chang'an went upstairs by himself and came to the kitchen to cook the rice. After a while, Shang Guandandan, who had escaped the control of the sweet potato scraper, came outside the kitchen and stood by the door frame watching Lu Chang'an's work. Lu Chang'an looked back at her, and Shang Guandandan retracted his body a little. "Help me pick the vegetables." Lu Chang'an stopped asking her with his eyes if she would like to help make lunch, and directly made the request. I don't know how. Shang Guandandan gave the same reason and expressed his refusal to learn with his eyes. "Then help me boil water." Lu Chang'an found something for her to do that she couldn't say she didn't know how to do. If she couldn't boil water, where did the hot water she used for her effervescent tablets come from every day? Shang Guandandan looked at the equipment in the kitchen and the huge kettle, which was much larger than the kettle Shang Guandandan used. He couldn't help but shook his head with some resistance, and opened his hands in front of his chest for a hug. Glanced at the diameter of the embrace, and then shrunk it a little to show Lu Chang'an, "I can only boil pots of this size." What's the difference between boiling water in a big pot and a small pot? Lu Chang'an couldn't understand. "I can't lift the big pot." Shang Guandandan pointed to his thin arm, "and the big pot looks very dangerous. What will happen if it explodes later? You can jump up a tree, but you can't lift a big kettle." Lu Chang'an sometimes talks perfunctorily and doesn't bother to find a more reliable reason, so she especially feels that her perfunctory reasons are too fake. Shang Guandandan nodded and huddled outside the door, leaving only half of his face exposed to look at Lu Chang'an, and said angrily, "And if you insist on wanting me to work, I will feel very upset. I'm going to rest. Maybe I won't come out until the day after tomorrow." "You have so much money, and how can you bear to wait until the day after tomorrow to play cards?" Lu Chang'an didn't believe it. "Let me tell you this first." Shang Guandandan thought for a while. Why should he question her? Really, whatever she says is what she says, just listen to what she means. The most annoying thing is that there are always people looking for questions to question her statement. Lu Chang'an was too lazy to talk. When he had time, he asked her to do some work, and he finished it by himself. Seeing that Lu Chang'an didn't seem to let her work anymore, Shang Guandandan walked into the kitchen, turned the faucet that seemed different from the one downstairs, turned on the water meter and looked at it for 3 minutes, and then turned every button on the juicer. They all clicked, and then gave Lu Chang'an a suggestion: "Why don't you use a small stove to burn briquettes? I heard that liquefied gas is very dangerous. It can explode and poison people." "Thank you, you don't have to worry about it." Lu Chang'an couldn't accept advice from someone who didn't work and could only beep. Shang Guandandan was a little worried. It was impossible for her to not care about him. After all, he was her only relative and support. Although there should be no problem if he was poisoned, poisoning was not good after all. "I'll bring up the small stove downstairs for you to use."
After Shang Guandandan finished speaking, he went downstairs, and Lu Chang'an ignored her. Shang Guandandan came to the room downstairs. There was still some fire in the briquettes in the small stove. Shang Guandandan put a pot of water on it to heat it, so as not to waste the heat of the briquettes. She took out the burned briquettes from underneath. I added a new briquette and turned on the small stove. It's so heavy that I can't lift it. Shang Guandandan gave up and went to the kitchen to report to Lu Chang'an, I want to help you with the work, but I can't lift that small stove. Lu Chang'an nodded. She didn't want to bring it up at all, right? Shang Guandandan wiped his forehead again. If you want to use a small stove in the future, you can use it downstairs, but there are almost no briquettes. If you want to use it, you have to buy some briquettes. I only have 100 yuan. I can only buy a little bit. Lu Chang'an finally understood. Shang Guandandan risked doing housework and ran up and down to perform. In fact, it was because her small stove had no briquettes. If Lu Chang'an wanted to use it, she would have to buy briquettes. Then she can lick the briquettes for the small stove every day, then boil the hot water and pour it into her precious thermos pot, and continue to be her pot-holding girl. Lu Chang'an glared at her, washed his hands, went to get his mobile phone and called the master who sent the briquettes, and asked him to send a cart of briquettes over in the afternoon. After listening to Lu Chang'an's call, Shang Guandandan was very happy. He took the initiative to lift Lu Chang'an's big kettle and put it under the faucet to fill it with water. Ouch, ouch. Shang Guandandan mentioned it and gave up. It wasn't that the Queen Mother didn't work, but that she really didn't have that much strength. She had tried her best. Get out of here. Lu Chang'an pushed Shang Guandandan out of the kitchen and simply closed the door to prevent her from doing nothing and pretending to cause trouble. I recommend a book called My Restaurant Connects to Another World. Qian Chen aspires to become the strongest foodie, but travels to a parallel world where chefs are respected. Forget it, the system also opens the door to connect with different worlds. The space door opens every Sunday night, and the restaurant welcomes guests from different worlds. Get good reviews and get good review points. Customer satisfaction increases and you can get special rewards. Find Iron Man to customize artificial intelligence molecular cuisine kitchenware. Use raisin wand to close the noodles. Control the heat with sasheo fruit. What? Do you have the divine eye that can copy food? Qian Chen showed his kaleidoscope Sherinan and smiled without saying a word. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 499. After lunch, the man who delivered the briquettes drove over. Lu Chang'an helped unload the briquettes. They were piled up in rows under the stairs, and even some were piled on Lucine's doghouse. Nowadays, there are fewer and fewer people burning briquettes in the city. Except for these very old communities and streets, they are almost missing in newly built communities and development areas. Lu Chang'an remembered the old days, when everyone could do it themselves and would not hire anyone else. The same was true for making briquettes. Buy a cart of coal, dump it in the yard, smash the big pieces, filter out the coal powder with a sieve, mix it with Loess and water, then use a mold to make briquettes one by one, and then dry them. This method of handmade briquettes is time-consuming and labor-intensive. Now everyone is buying briquettes made by machines. In fact, flammable and environmentally friendly briquettes have basically replaced this old formula of briquettes. After the briquettes were piled up, Shang Guandandan walked out of the room. After watching Lu Chang'an pay the money, she waved to the master who delivered the briquettes. Although he didn't know why this beautiful girl who suddenly ran out waved to him, the master smiled and nodded, and then drove away. Shang Guandandan looked at the piles of briquettes under the stairs, smiled happily, clapped his hands on his chest, then stood in front of Lu Chang'an, leaned into his arms, raised his head and glanced back at him, somewhat satisfying taste. Do you think this is the feeling of a loving mother and a filial son that you long for, Lu Chang'an glanced at her and knew what she was thinking. Shang Guandandan nodded, turned around, stood on tiptoe, and wanted to touch Lu Chang'an's head to express his love, but Lu Chang'an didn't know how to cooperate at all, and he didn't know how to lower his head at this time to prevent her from getting enough. Not. Shang Guandandan jumped and gave up. Lu Chang'an held her head down and pushed her away. After thinking about it, he tapped her nose. Wait. Shang Guandandan tilted his head to watch Lu Chang'an go upstairs, wondering what he was going to do. Shang Guandandan first moved a briquette back to the utility room, then took a cup of effervescent water with the lid of the pot and drank it. He sat on Lu Chang'an's recliner and looked up at the sparse leaves of the sycamore tree. It is late autumn and almost winter. At this time, a tall and bearded man with fair skin and sparse eyebrows came down from upstairs. He was wearing a long gown and cloth shoes, and looked at Shang Guandandan with a smile. Shang Guandandan's fingers holding the pot lid trembled for a moment, his eyes flashed with incredible light, and he slowly stood up. This was the first powerful official in history to dethrone the emperor, and he was also the hero who truly and completely expelled the Xiongnu, recuperated and started the Zhaoxian Zhongxing. Huo Guang, the first of the 11 heroes of Kailan Pavilion. Grandfather Shang Guandandan put down the lid and the thermos. In an instant, he returned to the Queen Mother's reserve and elegance from the girl holding the pot, and bowed slightly to salute. After the Huo Guang clan destroyed Shang Guanji and his son, Shang Guandandan no longer called Huo Guang grandfather, but was changed to grandfather by Huo Guang's request. In court, Huo Guang would salute her, but in private Shang Guandandan still treat Huo Guang with courtesy as a younger generation. Good. Huo Guang touched Shang Guandandan's head and said, "Scream again." Grandpa Shang Guandandan smiled deliberately and intimately. After shouting, Shang Guandandan felt something was wrong. He couldn't help but raise his head and show some doubts. His grandfather should actually be taller. Even when he was old and frail, he was still as tall as the man in front of him. The man in front of me looked like my grandfather in his prime, but his height was the same as when he was old. Ha ha. Lu Chang'an laughed. Of course, this Huo Guang was pretending to be him. He still reached out and touched Shang Guandandan's head. "Good granddaughter. You. Shang Guandandan realized it at this time. After all, Huo Guang's coercion was too deeply rooted in people's hearts. At first, Shang Guandandan didn't even notice that his breath was wrong. He only looked at the familiar face. He couldn't help but return to the state of mind he had held back in Vyang Palace. Shang Guan picked up the lid of his pot angrily, drank the full cup of effervescent water he just poured, and stared at Lu Chang'an with moist lips. "I will be punished with death, so the emperor will always protect the ancestral temple in the sea, and the rewards and punishments will be based on kindness, filial piety, etiquette, and friendship." After the king of Changji died, he was beheaded, his heart was sad, he abandoned etiquette and friendship, and he was not a vegetarian on the road, so he made his subordinates a woman from an official position carries clothes in a carriage and lives in the passing house. When she comes to visit and is established as the crown prince, she often buys chickens and dolphins for food privately. Before receiving the emperor's letter and official seal, she will not seal it for the first time, walking in the front hall, playing UFO instruments, attracting musicians from Niakang City, playing drums, singing and performing haikwang, driving Dharma chariot, Pai Xianluan flag, driving through Beigong and Gigong, playing pigs and fighting tigers. Summoning the Queen Mother, he drove a small carriage and had his servants ride it, and played games in the courtyard. He had fornication with Meng Etal, a member of Emperor Xiao's palace. Lu Chang'an read a section of comment to the deposition of the king of Changji, which was a memorial written by Yang Chang to Shang Guandandan on the order of Huo Guang. He wrote a bunch of messy charges, even including things like playing with the Queen Mother's pony carriage. As for the emperor's promiscuity, is that considered promiscuity?
If you are not promiscuous as an emperor, then why do you need a harem? There is really no excuse for wanting to inflict a crime. After the memorial was sent, Shang Guandandan knew of course that his stepson was gone. Those who presented the memorial included the Prime Minister, the Great General, the Chariot and Cavalry General, the former General and the later General, the Imperial Minister, etc., all of whom were later to be the 11 heroes of Kailan Pavilion. A people. Why are you thinking about this? Shang Guandandan said angrily, his cheeks turning red. I have tried my best to protect you, if you hadn't been that night, if you hadn't forced me to have sex with all your wet nurses that night, I would have. I won't tell Yang Chang that he wants to depose you, but you are saying, yes. At that time, everyone had to be famous in everything they did. Otherwise, with Huo Guang's power and another dynasty, the emperor would really be deposed at his will. Why would there be so many excuses and so many people to support the scene? The situation at that time, if Shang Guandandan had not nodded and issued an edict, the emperor would not be dethroned so easily. Similarly, where is Huo Guang's credit? Although the imperial family was wary of this powerful official with great achievements, he was still listed as the first of the 11 heroes of Kailan Pavilion, because when Huo Guang was alive, he did everything turned out to be famous. Even though the emperor of the Lu family later destroyed the Huo family, he did not want to banish Huo Guang into the mortal world as well. Lu Chang'an coughed lightly and touched his long beard. Women just like to recount old scores, and they can recount events from more than 2,000 years ago. They just want to settle old scores, but the point is that they are completely unreasonable when they settle old scores. As long as she feels that she has suffered a loss and been wronged, it doesn't matter what the situation was at the time, who was responsible, or who caused such consequences. Lu Chang'an didn't care about taking the blame, but since Shang Guandandan always talked about it, he would have to write a bleeding night in Viang Palace clearly one day. First, I didn't force you. You were curious and mixed in with the palace maids. Second, I was doing an experiment, not fornication. Third, I already made it clear that night that the wine I drank contained my semen. UN Harmony medicine will allow the human body to maximize its potential. There may be sober but irrational impulses that cannot be controlled. You still chose to drink those drinks. This is your own choice. Why it turned out to be my fault? Lu Chang'an calmly reasoned with Shang Guandandan. Are you trying to reason with me? Shang Guandandan looked at Lu Chang'an in confusion, and raised his hand to pull Lu Chang'an's beard. Of course, everyone has to be reasonable. Can you not be reasonable? Lu Chang'an said matter-of-factly. He pulled her finger, but it was so strong that she couldn't lift the kettle with such strength. Then is it true that you robbed my pony carriage? Shang Guandandan thought for a while and calmly mentioned a fact recorded in the memorial. Is this a big deal? Lu Chang'an admitted. At that time, he thought the little carriage was a bit strange, and some of the patterns and inscriptions on the little carriage still appeared on the current bronze coffins, but at that time, no investigation was found. After all, he returned it to her after just playing with it. There were many carriages in Viang Palace. He had just arrived, how could he know that it was the little Queen Mother's most beloved carriage? It was also pulled by 2 dwarf horses, which looked like children's toys. Just say, yes, or, no. Shang Guandandan doesn't care whether it counts as a big deal or not. Many things are like this. If you don't care about it, it is a trivial matter. If she is willing to care about it, it is a national matter. Yes, the gentleman said frankly, and Lu Chang'an nodded. Then you still say it's not your fault, just admit it. Shang Guandandan wrinkled her nose, and the feeling of confidence made her want to drink effervescent water. That's not what I'm talking about. It's because you robbed my pony carriage that I was particularly angry and wanted to pretend to be a palace maid. This is the cause and effect. How can you isolate one thing and say whether it is right or wrong without considering the cause and effect?
Shang Guandandan both hands stretched out and pulled Lu Chang'an's beard together, standing on tiptoes. What else do you have to say? Lu Chang'an didn't want to reason with her anymore. He shook his head to show that he just didn't want to talk, not that he had nothing to say. Since you have nothing to say, I will forgive you for the time being. After all, those people back then have passed away, and only the two of us are left. Shang Guandandan tugged at the beard on this face again. After all, back then, Huo Guang did not have his beard pulled by his granddaughter. Shang Guandandan let go of his beard and asked, are there any descendants of those people from those days who can pass them down? I don't know, but Yang Chang, who wrote the memorial to depose me, will have great glory for his descendants. Lu Chang'an thought for a while. The history is too long, with several dynasties rising and falling, and several liquidations of the family. Now it is also difficult to verify. Prime Minister Yang is Sima Qian's son-in-law, and the Sima family's wife is very powerful, Shang Guandandan said with deep impression. Yang Chang is the first-generation ancestor of the Yang family in Hungnang. Their lineage later gave birth to Yang Zhen, the Yang Zhen that God knows, I know, and you know. Starting from Yang Zhen, the Yang family has 4 generations and 3 dukes. In the Sui dynasty, there were Yang Jian, Yang Guang, Yang Su, and Yang Suangan. In the Tang dynasty, there were 11 prime minister families. Wu Zetian's mother and Tang Xuanzang's mother were all from the Yang family. Do the Yang family members know? Yes, Lu Chang'an was slightly envious. It's a pity that I don't have a son, otherwise it might be interesting to raise a family of my own blood. Prime Minister Yang's descendants are so prosperous. How did you know? Beidou. Is it accurate? Just look around, it's not a matter of learning. Shang Guandandan lowered his head and touched his belly, and couldn't help but look at Lu Chang'an with some worry. Can I still have a baby? It seems that she is also a little envious. How did Lu Chang'an know? She didn't want to use it as a specimen for him to study, so she shook her head. Generally speaking, if you have menstruation, you should be able to give birth. So Shang Guandandan blushed. If he had a child, what would he call him? What happened to yesterday's red envelope? The book has been added to collections by 43,000. What kind of red envelope is this so powerful? I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 500. Lu Chang'an went back and changed his clothes, regaining his appearance as an ordinary 18-year-old college student. Lu Chang'an wasted some time pretending to be Huo Guang and felt that he was going to be late for class, so he watched Shang Guandandan play 2 cards under the grapevine before he was slow. Walk slowly to school. I'm already late, so there's no need to worry. Isn't this a matter of course? Just like the principle that you don't need to take shelter from the rain even if you get wet on a rainy day, these are thoughts rich in the philosophy of life. When Lu Chang'an came to school, the first period had already ended, but the teacher only started to call the roll during the second period. So those who thought that there would be no roll call today left early, and those who got the news that there was no roll call and decided not to come to the second class, were all arrested. Lu Chang'an was not proud of this, because being late for class, leaving early, and absenteeism was not something to be proud of in the first place. Just like some people know that they cannot sacrifice themselves, so they particularly admire heroes who can sacrifice themselves, while some people's idea is to vilify and paint heroes who sacrifice themselves, and then triumphantly say that there is no real sacrifice in the world. A hero, acting selfishly and cowardly is the rational and best choice. Today is the last day of Zhu Huntang's confinement. She did not come. Yan Qingcheng sat with several female classmates, glanced at Lu Chang'an from a distance, showed a generous smile and nodded. On the contrary, it seemed that she was alienating him more deliberately. Lu Chang'an didn't care, and turned to talk to Qin's Haiqiang. Since Qin's Haiqiang stopped playing mobile games, he seemed to be a completely different person. His living standard had improved significantly. He no longer always looked like a t-shirt and shorts worth 50 yuan. He also bought after using facial cleanser, my face is no longer oily, and my acne has stopped breaking out. The most important thing is that Chin's Haikyung lost a lot of weight, so the girls in the class also started talking to him and often asked him how he lost weight. This made both Sun Shutong and Wei Xuanyi a little jealous. After all, there were only a few girls in the class, and there were too many monks and too little food. Sometimes they would lament that fat people are all potential stocks. Lu Chang'an finished his class and walked towards the Academy Square. There was a campus ticket agent for a comic exhibition in the Academy Square who was promoting and selling tickets. When Lu Chang'an passed by, he saw Bai Hui standing behind the billboard, talking to a boy. Seeing Lu Chang'an, Bai Hui's expression changed slightly, and she smiled at the boy. I am a guest at the comic show this weekend, so come and support me. The boy was stunned for a moment, and was suddenly flattered. You must know that a second ago, the look on Bai Hui's face was clearly the one of suppressing impatience. Okay, I'll definitely come, the boy nodded hurriedly. Bai Hui gave him a comic show ticket. The boy excitedly held the ticket in his hand. Bai Hui waved his hand. Although he was flattered and frightened, he didn't dare to pester the goddess anymore. He held the comic exhibition ticket in his hand and took out his mobile phone and couldn't wait to get it. Share this good news. Bai Hui first watched the boy leave, silently reciting 3, 2, 1 in his mind before slowly turning around. Where is Lu Chang'an? Bai Hui had clearly planned it. With Lu Chang'an's accustomed walking speed, he should have walked to the tree behind him at the right moment. Turning around at this time, he could just meet his eyes, and then talk to him casually. He said hello. Bai Hui looked around hurriedly and came out from behind the poster. Then she saw Lu Chang'an standing right in front of the poster, watching her run out, glancing at her and then at the poster. The poster shows a cartoon image of Bai Hui, with her C-circle name below, Hui Si. Of course, her main ID on the video website is still the 4 ways to write the word fennel, but such a long ID is obviously not suitable for a circle name. Fancy is both the abbreviation of ID and the homophonic pronunciation of things. When read, it makes people think of what a fat thing. Baifan feels so cute. Lu Chang'an just came to look at the poster. He nodded and said hello to Bai Hui and was about to leave. He felt that the cartoon image on this poster was very similar except for the height. How could Bai Hui be so cute? But you can't say this directly. Is Lu Chang'an that kind of straight man? Of course not, Gao Dui is. Why are you here? Bai Hui was in a hurry. He had just thought of the scene and the lines he wanted to perform, but had completely forgotten them, so he casually said hello and asked. I can be wherever I want, Lu Chang'an said. Bai Fen was so angry. Why did this person always talk to her as if he had eaten gunpowder? I was giving away tickets just now. I have a comic convention to attend, and as a guest, I have a few tickets for friends and family. I just gave one to someone I don't know very well and have a bad relationship with. Bai Hui took out a few tickets from behind her back and rubbed them with her fingers. Would you like to take a few? If you don't want to come then, it's okay to throw them away. Anyway, I just need to give them away. You want me to help you throw it into the trash can? Lu Chang'an understood and pointed to the trash can not far away. Sometimes some girls who meet on the street handing out flyers are like this and ask for help. Throw it in the trash can. Yes, Bai Hui gritted her teeth and looked at Lu Chang'an. She felt that if her teeth were as sharp as a tiger cub, she would kill him by now. Lu Chang'an nodded, took it, and left. Bai Hui felt that tears were about to burst out of her eyes, and her vision was a little blurry. In the blur, she saw Lu Chang'an passing by the trash can. He didn't lose anything. Bai Hui quickly wiped his eyes. Did he not see clearly just now? Bai Hui stood there and waited for a minute, until Lu Chang'an walked around the corner. Then Bai Hui hurriedly ran to the trash can, opened the lid, took a look, and reached out to flip through it. Her vote is not here. So happy, Bai Hui wiped her tears, smelled the smell on her hands, and washed her hands quickly. She cried and laughed like a fool. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 501. Since the end of the Qing dynasty, and also since Yechaniu, he has been very busy, doing a lot of things, and participating in many historical events, so as Lu Chang'an in this life, he plans to take a break and be an ordinary person who actively participates in the construction of a socialist country and realizes national rejuvenation. People are quietly waiting for the breakthrough of science and technology. The lifestyle changes in recent years have been earth-shaking, but it is not the leap Lu Chang'an expected. Since he is an ordinary Lu Chang'an, the girlfriend he needs is a beautiful girl like An Nuan. She is beautiful and cute, and can definitely meet all the expectations of a man for a girlfriend. This is fate. Some people will always lose what they want in the end, while for some people, what they want will appear at the right time when they need it. When he was a freshman in high school, two beautiful girls, An Nuan and Bai Hui, appeared in front of Lu Chang'an at the same time. They are all beautiful girls, invincible in their youth, exuding the kind of bouncing energy all over their bodies. They always look so cute that if you make her laugh, she will tremble like a flower branch, just like the bees came over and stepped on the stamens gently, scattering the petals and spraying out the fragrance accumulated since they grew up, and they were intoxicated by the smell. Lu Chang'an took a few tickets to the comic show and recalled his high school life. He was very sure that whether it was An Nuan or Bai Hui, their bust sizes had grown slowly from the first year to the third year of high school. It was just that Bai Hui had a better foundation, so he further discussed with An Nuan. Nuan distanced herself. When I was thinking about fat, I suddenly saw Qin Yanan, the king of rational use of fat. She probably just got off work and saw Lu Chang'an from a distance. She didn't come over to say hello, she just stood there and looked at him, waiting for Lu Chang'an to come too. When he saw her and met his eyes, she glared at him with blushing cheeks, then turned and walked away. Women are really contradictory. If they really feel ashamed, the best way to deal with it is to maintain a tacit agreement with the other party and never mention it. After a few days, the feeling of shame will naturally fade away, but she just did something unusual. The way he looked, wasn't this reminding him of what happened? Madness. Lu Chang'an had long forgotten, so he waved as usual, regardless of whether she could see it or not, and then walked home. He bought a box of charcoal from the grocery store in the vegetable market. Originally, he could make this by himself, but considering the cost of making it himself, it was not easy to find materials suitable for making charcoal now, so he bought a box directly. Lu Chang'an went home with charcoal in his arms, and met Lucine squatting motionless at the gate of the community. This dog did not always stay in the kennel or near the sycamore tree. Just like Zhou Dongdong when he was not in school, he was just there, running around the neighborhood. Lucine squatted here because he was praised by the elderly in the community. They believed that such a powerful dog squatting at the entrance of the community enhanced the momentum of the community and could deter thieves. Seeing Lu Chang'an, Lucine followed Lu Chang'an home. There was no card game under the vines. Lu Chang'an saw Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong under the sycamore tree. There were two people, one big and one small, surrounding the small stove. There were a few eggs placed on the edge of the small stove. In the past, when people mainly used briquette stoves, this was a common way to eat eggs. Wrap the eggs in paper, soak the paper with water and place it next to the stove for baking. The cooked eggs in this way are often fragrant. Now there is also people push ovens on the street and sell eggs, corn,
sweet potatoes and the like baked in this way. Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong sat around the small stove, looking attentively at their baked eggs. You can still do this, Lu Chang'an looked at Shang Guandandan with some surprise. Shang Guandandan pointed at Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong raised his hand, indicating that it was indeed a smart kid who did it. Where did the eggs come from? Lu Chang'an asked casually. There happened to be no eggs upstairs and downstairs, so he hadn't gone to buy them yet. Old Mrs. Lu lost 10 yuan to me. She said she didn't bring any money, so she went back and brought these eggs to me, Shang Guandandan said without paying much attention, although after calculating it 3 times, she was sure that Mrs. Lu had some. Cheap. Old Mrs. Lu often used eggs, vegetables and the like to pay off her bills. Lu Chang'an had eaten a lot of her local eggs in this way. Did you just eat roasted sweet potatoes? Lu Chang'an reached out and wiped the corners of Zhou Dongdong's mouth. The big one and the small one actually had some sweet potatoes on the corners of their mouths, and there was still some black ash on Zhou Dongdong's face. Zhou Dongdong stood up quickly, ran to the big stove, scratched with a stick for a while, found a gray roasted sweet potato and handed it to Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an looked at the dirty roasted sweet potato, and then looked at Zhou Dongdong's expression as if he was offering a treasure. He was really embarrassed. Why did you put it there? This is the roasted sweet potato that Zhou Dongdong left for Lu Chang'an. The problem is that when the big stove is burned, the ashes can indeed keep warm, but there is no fire. I originally wanted to put it on the small stove, but I was afraid that it would suddenly disappear, so I hid it there. Zhou Dongdong certainly had his own reasons. Why did it suddenly disappear? Sometimes I don't remember whether I ate it or not, and then the food disappears. My mother says I ate it, Zhou Dongdong said sadly. Sometimes some delicious food disappears quickly. Zhou Dongdong felt that she didn't eat much, but her mother always sent her pictures of her eating so much, which was really strange. That's it. Lu Chang'an took it, peeled it off, pinched it and ate it. What's more embarrassing is that it is very difficult to eat something like roasted sweet potato without it sticking to your lips or having the sweet potato on your lips. After all, even Shang Guandandan, who is good at eating without saying a word, still stains his mouth and face when he eats. After eating the roasted sweet potatoes, Lu Chang'an began to dig a hole in the ground. Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong were still sitting next to the small stove, looking at their baked eggs and watching Lu Chang'an dig a hole. Lu Chang'an dug a pit 30 centimeters deep, 30 centimeters wide and 90 centimeters long, and laid broken red bricks and pebbles at the bottom. Zhou Dongdong picked up the pebbles when he was playing in the river sand. Carrying a pile of stones in his school bag is a common thing for children. We are having barbecue tonight. Lu Chang'an made 2 Y-shaped racks on the left and right sides of the pit, and a simple barbecue equipment was completed. By the way, he called Zhou Shuling and asked her to come back later to have barbecue. After all, this barbecue is not freshly grilled. If you eat it, it won't taste like barbecue. Zhou Shuling said she would bring beer back for him to drink, and Lu Chang'an agreed. After all, the box of wool yanjai he had at home was more suitable for food and wine, and barbecue went better with beer. Lu Chang'an went to dig out the buried goose skeleton again. After accumulating it for so long, there were many fat and big centipedes inside. Why are the centipedes around here so big? Shang Guandandan asked strangely. One time, Lu Chang'an didn't send little hens to the carriage, but sent centipedes. Wherever I am, I will nourish the soil and water there. I haven't seen this community. Except for the time when you blindly sucked people's blood, don't the old men and women here rarely get sick? Even if they do, they will get better soon. Centipedes are particularly good at absorbing the essence of the heaven, earth, sun, and moon. People like me are also what they yearn for, so the centipedes here are plentiful, fat, and delicious. Lu Chang'an did some popular science. There are so many centipedes, they are fat and delicious. Zhou Dongdong grasped the key point.
went to get a bag and asked Lu Chang'an to pack all the centipedes. I didn't mean it, Shang Guandandan said softly. Lu Chang'an didn't mean to say anything about her. Zhou Dongdong ran upstairs first, rummaged around the house for a while, found a box of red pills, took them down, and said happily to Lu Chang'an, "Fortunately, I found Mom's antidote, so we won't poisoned." Zhou Dongdong recalled with lingering fear the last time he ate a centipede. Brother Chang'an asked him to go back and wait to die and be a smart kid in the next life. Fortunately, his mother detoxified him. That's great. Lu Chang'an ate a candy and gave another to Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan held it in his mouth, and swept the sugar pill back and forth with his tongue, making the whole mouth sweet. Then he rolled his tongue and swallowed the sugar pill into his throat. Zhou Dongdong ate one pill, feeling a little worried, so he ate 2 more pills, so that if he accidentally ate more centipedes, he would not die if he was poisoned by too many centipedes. Lu Chang'an went to wash the centipedes, peel them off, and then went upstairs to bring down a wild boar leg. Such a huge wild boar leg should taste the same even to 3 heroes and their daughter-in-law, who is very good at not wasting food. Enough. After a while, Zhou Shuling came back with a supermarket shopping cart and a cart of beer. Lu Chang'an saw beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Her collar was loosened and a little messy. He didn't know why this weak and slender woman wanted to buy so much beer at once. Know how to make a phone call and have someone pick it up. I'm familiar with people in the supermarket. I borrowed a shopping cart when I came back. I met an old man in his 70s on the way. He helped me when I went up the steps. He is getting stronger with age and has great strength, but I'm a little worried about him. Fortunately, I didn't fall or break something. Zhou Shuling fanned the cool breeze with her hands and said with some regret, "People just can't get used to it easily. You see, I used to push such a big breakfast cart up and downhill by myself. There's no problem, pushing a shopping cart now takes a lot of effort." "Why did you buy so much beer?" Lu Chang'an asked. "How long did you have to drink it? Isn't this a discount? Buy one, get one free. I think the production date is okay, and it will take 2 months to expire." Zhou Shuling is a person who knows how to live. "Okay, then you should drink more yourself." Lu Chang'an knew that she bought this beer for him to drink, and she didn't drink it often herself, but her drinking capacity was tolerable, and she wasn't the kind of person who drank 3 glasses of beer. Lu Chang'an opened a can and handed it to Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong licked the beer foam in his mouth. He frowned and trembled. He rolled down from the stool and had a hard time getting up. "She was not the first. I drank beer once, but I just couldn't figure out why adults like drinking so much. Are children just not used to drinking it? At first I was not used to drinking it, and I cried a lot. Now I don't cry anymore, but I just want to try it unwillingly. Maybe I will suddenly grow up and be able to drink it when I become an adult." "Do you want it?" Lu Chang'an opened another can and handed it to Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan glanced at Zhou Dongdong and shook her head hesitantly. She didn't want to drink this and roll to the ground, so she poured the effervescent water herself and drank it with Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Shuling took it, frowned and drank half of it in one breath. Although she didn't like beer, she couldn't waste it after buying it. Lu Chang'an began to roast wild boar legs and centipede meat, and prepared dipping sauce. The 4 of them gathered around the fire pit and ate with oily mouthfuls. Only Shang Guandandan avoided eating greasy. After finishing the barbecue and cleaning up together, they all sat under the sycamore tree to rest. Lu Chang'an looked at Shang Guandandan, who was still sitting next to the small stove, and felt that something was wrong. "What are you looking at me for?" Shang Guandandan looked at Lu Chang'an suspiciously. He must be trying to cause trouble for him again, so he held the thermos pot in his arms. "I noticed that you sat there and didn't move since I came back, and you didn't move until we finished eating." Lu Chang'an came to his senses. Why did he think Shang Guandandan was a point of disharmony? Because she and Zhou Dongdong have been having a barbecue, and although Zhou Dongdong usually makes trouble, she showed her subjective initiative. Zhou Shuling even pushed a shopping cart of beer back, made dipping sauce, and put away the dishes. Only Shang Guandandan was sitting there doing nothing, like a bodhisattva. I moved the small stool from there to here. Shang Guandandan pointed to the distance between the original small stove and the pit dug by Lu Chang'an. How can this be called untouched? Shang Guandandan stood up and took 2 steps back and forth. It was obviously so far away. Lu Chang'an also nodded and said nothing more, because it was useless to say anything. He also somewhat understood why Shang Guandandan could stay in the coffin for so long without coming out. It turned out that she really was not willing to move. So Lu Chang'an wanted to take her around. He led Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong to Bailong Center with Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling also had to go to the store to have a look and return the shopping cart to the supermarket. I want to hold your finger. Zhou Dongdong ran a few steps and couldn't keep up with brother Chang'an's footsteps, so he shouted. Lu Chang'an put his hands behind his back, hooked his little finger, and Zhou Dongdong caught it. Shang Guandandan glanced at it and grabbed Lu Chang'an's other hand. His hand was clenched into a fist. Shang Guandandan opened his fingers one by one, and then also grabbed the little finger. Zhou Shuling looks a little want to laugh. Lu Chang'an is obviously a young man, but whether he is bringing Shang Guandandan or Zhou Dongdong, he is like a father taking care of a child. It is an objective feeling that Zhou Shuling does not want Lu Chang'an to be Zhou Dongdong's father. Who would think of such an outlandish thing? Why are you laughing? Do you want to pull my clothes from behind? Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Shuling. I don't want it, I'm not a child. Zhou Shuling was pushing the shopping cart and didn't want to play with the children. Lu Sin caught up with him and ran to the entrance of the community to watch his owners leave. He stretched his legs, opened his mouth and roared a few times, then ran back a little further and squatted at the entrance of the community. Arriving at Bailong Center, Zhou Shuling pushed the shopping cart in. Lu Chang'an did not go in and wander around. Men generally have a strong purpose when shopping, otherwise they would not easily look around with interest in the mall without knowing what they want to buy. Except for the air conditioning. He pulled out 2 fingers and held them for a while, feeling that his whole little finger was warm. Brother Chang'an, let's go play trampoline and pinball world together, Zhou Dongdong suggested. You go ahead. Lu Chang'an is an adult, so why would he be interested in playing in such a children's amusement facility? But we don't have money. Zhou Dongdong rummaged through his pockets. Mom said we can play once a week. Lu Chang'an was just about to take out the money and give it to Shang Guandandan, but when he glanced at Shang Guandandan, he found that she was watching him take out the money. After thinking about it, he still felt uneasy, because if he gave 50 yuan to Shang Guandandan, she might if you fool Zhou Dongdong into buying food for 20 yuan, Zhou Dongdong will happily forget about the trampoline and pinball world, and then Shang Guandandan will probably spend 30 yuan to buy effervescent tablets. So Lu Chang'an took the 2 of them to the children's play center on the first floor of the shopping mall, and paid for them to play here. Although Shang Guandandan is no longer a child, it is normal for a rare and strange little old lady to be addicted to modern entertainment facilities. Things that modern children play with, are certainly very rare for ancient people to play with occasionally. Lu Chang'an sent a message to Zhou Shuling, saying that if he had not come back to the children's play center to pick up the people when she closed the store, he would ask her to pick up the 2 people, and then he went to wander on the street in a relaxed manner. As autumn deepens and then winter approaches, more and more people wear short leather pants paired with stockings and long boots. Recently, stalls selling balloons and exchanging dolls have gradually become popular in Juncha. In the middle of the night, when the urban management team is off duty and no longer patrolling, this is what is happening in front of you. There are many stalls like this on the pedestrian street that has been bustling for more than 20 years in Tiao Juncha. Now the stall owners are taking some things and placing them in their respective places, occupying the space first. Lu Chang'an felt that he could show off his skills, but he couldn't wait until then to play, so he played at the claw machine in the inner street for a while. Just after picking up 5 dolls, Lu Chang'an took out his mobile phone and was about to exchange coins when Bai Hui called and asked if he was at home, saying that he had something to ask him for help. A soft-spoken man who eats people but has short hands when he takes others, Lu Chang'an accepted Bai Hui's comic exhibition ticket, so he told her nicely that he was not at home and was now on the street. Bai Hui said he would wait for him at the Hermes counter facing the street. There was only one Hermes counter in Junsha, so it was easy to find. Lu Chang'an walked over with 5 dolls in his arms. As soon as he walked over, Lu Chang'an saw that Jian Ning was also there, and a girl with light bangs and delicate features was talking about something. Her tone was a bit exaggerated. She was exactly the kind of woman in the market who raised her eyebrows and akimbo, and insisted on being there. The way the corners of the mouth turn up into a smile. I heard Jian Ning say that your family's background is quite average. I never thought you could actually afford Hermes. This fat house is very profitable. You act cute and dance every day, exposing your breasts, legs and so on. I'm afraid I can earn 100,000 a month. The girl clicked her tongue and sighed, I saw a piece of news last time. A welfare girl named Nine-Tailed Fox sells welfare resources and makes offline appointments. Got a Porsche 911. What do you mean? Jianning, what did you say about me in front of your girlfriend? Bai Hui glared at Jianning. He really didn't expect that his friend for many years would allow his girlfriend to slander and insult him. Jianning's new girlfriend, the friend's surname is also Bai and Bai Rui. When Jianning posted on Moments, Bai Hui even blessed them. I didn't say anything. You are so famous, and there are a lot of people who pick on you and tell you everything. It's not like you don't know. Jianning avoided Bai Hui's eyes. It was only after entering college that Jianning truly recognized, I know that there is no possibility for me and Bai Hui. I just found a girlfriend recently. She is good at everything, but she has a little problem and likes to be jealous. I know that Jianning has a good relationship with a very famous Wujian from Hunan University in high school. Then he began to carefully and deeply pickle the white fennel, and collected a bunch of so-called black materials of the white fennel, trying to prove that the white fennel made money by selling meat to the top and packaged it into white and rich beauty. Don't you know those are all fake? Bai Hui looked at Jianning coldly. Jianning didn't dare to look at Bai Hui, let alone defend her in front of his girlfriend Bai Rui. After all, Bai Hui couldn't chew the meat, but Bai Rui was ready-made in the bowl. If you say it's fake, it's fake. I didn't say you were like this, I'm just curious. It is said that there is a financial backer behind Miss Lo. They all like to call their financial backers daddy. Is that true? Bai Rui has beautiful eyebrows, but she speaks like a gun. She looked at the dress that was as cute as the little Princess Bai Fen, and laughed. I didn't say anything about you, don't think too much about it. You. Bai Hui was so out of breath that she had to hold her chest. She was so out of breath that she had no choice. This kind of low skirt often has a belt around the waist, which makes it a little tight. Usually, you need to deliberately breathe. Rhythm, let alone now. Lu Chang'an. Seeing Bai Hui being completely suppressed by his girlfriend, Jianning let out a sigh of relief in his heart, feeling a little indescribable secretly happy. He originally planned to let it go as soon as they got along, and just pull Bai Rui away, but he didn't. When I thought about it, I saw Lu Chang'an standing behind the three of them. Lu Chang'an is often so quiet, which is not surprising. He was often like this in high school. Sometimes he would call someone who clearly remembered that he was not there, but when he was called, he would pop out of nowhere. Bai Hui turned around, feeling aggrieved and not knowing why she was so unlucky. Every time she was so embarrassed, Lu Chang'an saw him, and he always had the expression, you go on, I'll just take a look. Are you Lu Chang'an? To the surprise of Jianning and Bai Hui, Bai Rui looked surprised and a little shy when she saw Lu Chang'an. She hurriedly brushed her bangs, adjusted her skirt, and watched intently. Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an nodded. I am your fangirl. I follow you on Weibo. I heard that you and Jian Ning are also high school classmates, Bai Rui said nervously. Lu Chang'an nodded. Can we make each other pink? Bai Rui's cheeks turned red. Lu Chang'an shook his head. Then, can we take a photo together? Bai Rui was a little surprised. She didn't expect Lu Chang'an to deny face. Generally speaking, he would not give Jian Ning face. How could anyone be so unkind? Lu Chang'an shook his head. Bai Rui turned to look at Jian Ning awkwardly and tugged on Jian Ning's sleeves. Didn't this idiot see that his girlfriend had no face at all? I don't know what to say to help. Lu Chang'an, give me some face, Jian Ning said coldly. He was angry. He never expected to meet Lu Chang'an, let alone Bai Rui actually said that she was Lu Chang'an's crush. Mini mom. But he didn't dare not help Bai Rui. After all, Bai Rui was the one who could break up with him 3 times in the morning, noon, and night. Once they broke up, he would have to work hard to coax her, which was extremely annoying. Sometimes I want to break up, but after all, we are girlfriends, free sex has not yet beaten the dog, and finding a new girlfriend may not be as beautiful as Bai Rui, and secondly, not all girls nowadays are a fake. Why should I give you face? Lu Chang'an shook his head. Jian Ning was stunned for a moment. We are high school classmates after all. You and Bai Hui are classmates in junior high school and high school, and you don't give her face. Why do you think that I will give you face when we have a casual relationship with you? Lu Chang'an suggested sincerely. Next year's Arbor Day, remember to plant trees. You. Jian Ning's cheeks were red and she pulled Bai Rui. Let's go. Lu Chang'an, can you agree if I apologize to Bai Hui? Bai Rui refused to leave. She and Jian Ning were not in the same school. They were separated by most of the city. This way, she could witness the legendary figure in the student circle with her own eyes. There are not many opportunities. Please apologize, Lu Chang'an said. Bai Rui brushed the hair beside her ears, hesitated, and finally smiled, saying to Bai Hui, don't mind, I really didn't mean it to you. It doesn't matter. Bai Hui lowered his head and looked at the floor. When Lu Chang'an saw Bai Rui also apologized, he felt that nothing had happened to him, so he turned around and left, still holding the 5 dolls in his arms. Lu Chang'an, we haven't taken a group photo yet. Bai Rui hurriedly chased after him. I just lied to you. Lu Chang'an immediately admitted that he had lied. You. Bai Rui stomped her feet angrily and stopped when she saw Lu Chang'an actually walked into the Hermes counter. For many girls, when they don't have a bank card with a sufficient denomination, they face this kind of situation. They didn't even have the courage to walk in at the counter. Understood? Lu Chang'an is such a person, and you are still his fangirl. What fangirl is he? Jian Ning said angrily. But she still has quite a personality. Bai Rui thought for a while, twisted her body and said. Jian Ning felt depressed, turned around and walked to the street to take a taxi, not bothering to care about Bai Rui. Bai Hui still stood there, suddenly smiled, and vaguely saw a little bit of herself in Bai Rui. Although she was not as extreme as Bai Rui, there were times when she behaved similarly, which made Lu Chang'an hate her, right? It's the first anniversary of the release of the book, which happens to be today. I would like to thank you all for your support in this chapter, and I would like to ask for monthly votes. I recommend a book rebirth at the turn of the century. Our family has 18 houses, and we can't even spend the monthly rent. What's the point of studying hard? A little fat man said to the reporter. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 502. Passing through the street-facing facade is the interior of the mall. When Lu Chang'an walked in, someone came to entertain him. "Do you think I am someone who can afford your things?" Lu Chang'an waved his hand and said. "Mr. Lu, you are joking." Lu Chang'an was a little surprised that the other party actually knew her. After taking a look, he saw that she was a mature woman with delicate and clean makeup, so she nodded and left. Bai Hui quickly chased after him, passed through, and followed Lu Chang'an's footsteps. "Lu Chang'an," Bai Hui shouted. She suspected that one of the important reasons why Lu Chang'an liked An Nuan was that only An Nuan's legs could keep up with the length of his steps. Although he walked slowly and leisurely most of the time. "You want my doll?" Lu Chang'an looked at Bai Hui suspiciously, then looked at his 5 dolls, hesitated, found a stupid-looking doll and handed it to Bai Hui. "Here you go, it matches you better." Bai Hui took a look and saw that it was a cute doll, so he took it over. She didn't expect that he would give her such a cute little doll. She couldn't help but smile and happily held it in her arms. "Wait a minute." Bai Hui didn't expect Lu Chang'an to give the baby away, so he walked forward on his own and quickly called him. "Don't be greedy, I won't give you another one." Lu Chang'an is not a stingy person, but everything is done in moderation. "I have something to ask you." Bai Hui pointed to a tea shop next to her. "I thought you were looking for me to attack Qianning and his girlfriend." Lu Chang'an smiled. "I'm not that boring." Bai Hui refused to admit that she was actually quite happy at the time, especially since Bai Rui was actually Lu Chang'an's crush. Qianning's face was really empathetic. Lu Chang'an looked at the time and saw that there was still some time before the mall closed, so he sat down with Bai Hui. Bai Hui ordered tea and snacks, looked at the 400 yuan for such a small thing, and smiled to himself. "With this kind of consumption, I don't feel any distress now. No wonder others think about it." "Yes." Lu Chang'an nodded in agreement. "This is the reason." "You." Bai Hui said it. Of course he wanted others to object and refute this trend of thought that you must be a meat seller if you have money. Angry, Bai Hui pressed her chest and took a sip of tea. Strangely enough, when Bai Rui and Qianning thought so, Bai Hui felt humiliated and sad. But Lu Chang'an's words were irritating, but Bai Hui didn't feel aggrieved. "Emotionally, I just feel that he is really annoying to the extreme." Bai Hui watched Lu Chang'an casually drinking tea and eating snacks. He gradually calmed down and returned to a fairly good mood. Bai Hui looked around, lowered his voice, and held onto his bag tightly. "You took another 200,000 yuan and put it in your bag." Lu Chang'an didn't think she would learn her lesson and not do this kind of thing a second time. For fairies, the fault is usually someone else's, and they don't eat much. Wisdom emerges from the chasm. Because the IQ level is fixed and cannot grow. No, thinking of what happened that time, Bai Hui still had lingering fears. Growing up in the most prosperous era under the red flag, he rarely encountered something as terrible as being robbed. If he hadn't been with Lu Chang'an that time, Bai Hui would definitely have been in trouble for the rest of his life. Shadow, after all, would be robbed, and maybe those robbers would ride a small electric stove and take her to a cellar or something like that to be a slave of some kind. The reason why she thought of such an evil scene was Lu Chang'an's fault, because he scared her like that at that time. Lu Chang'an continued to drink tea. He actually didn't ask himself anything. Chatting with this person was so depressing that Bai Hui couldn't help but reveal the news himself. "I followed your advice and sold them all when the price was 250 yuan. Later, after the stock rose to 261 yuan, it has been its falling. It seems that my algorithm is very scientific." Lu Chang'an nodded in agreement with himself. "I bought it for about 100 yuan, Bai Hui held the cute doll in her arms and was overjoyed. There is nothing happier than making money. He must be 10 times, no, 100 times happier than when Lu Chang'an and An Nuan were in love. Awesome. So in the era of dividends, when the country's economy is rising, people with talent, ability and hard work can often succeed, but there are also many people who get the dividends by relying on luck. In the early years, Lu Chang'an read some urban novels, in which the rich and successful people were always portrayed as elite and wise. Nowadays, fewer people deliberately write like this. It does not mean that the elite have become stupid, but that most people there are more channels for obtaining information, and we no longer have to look up. I'll give you the dividends. Bai Hui wanted to give money to Lu Chang'an again. No, although Lu Chang'an agreed that his algorithm was very scientific, in fact it was Bai Hui's own capital and luck, as well as her own judgment of choice. Lu Chang'an had no intention of taking credit. You can't always be like this. I got rich twice thanks to you, and you don't take any of the benefits. I feel sorry for you, Bai Hui said resolutely. This tea is quite delicious. Lu Chang'an picked up the teacup. Bai Hui was stunned for a moment and understood what he meant. After helping her make so much money, could she just drink tea? You only have a few dollars, but you still have the nerve to ask me to receive benefits. I don't even care about tens of billions and hundreds of billions, so I charge you benefits? You are looking down on me. Lu Chang'an became impatient. Are you okay? After drinking tea, we left. Bai Hui pursed her lips and looked at him dully. Why is this person so annoying? If you don't want it, just don't want it. Others will politely push him away and speak nicely. Everyone is smiling and enjoying the situation. But he really felt irritated, and he didn't feel that she was treating him with any good intentions. Then my cousin said that when I first met you, you were working on a construction site. You made 200 yuan a day, Bai Hui couldn't help but say. It's usually embarrassing to be exposed. Bai Hui secretly wanted to be bad. Will Lu Chang'an go ahead and beat her up or something? You must know that there is really no sign that he will fall out. Bai Hui has already seen it. I don't care about tens of billions, but I can't make 200 yuan, what kind of logic is this? Lu Chang'an shook his head, not feeling embarrassed as Bai Hui thought. I just discovered that moving bricks could quickly coordinate the reconstruction of my body through frequent repetitions. As for the 200 yuan, that's incidentally. Although my financial situation is indeed not good, do poor people have the right to regard money as dirt? Your ideological level is too low. Bai Hui didn't want to say anything. Anyway, as long as he didn't fall out, it would be fine. This man was indeed good at taking things that were unreasonable and lacking normal logic as a matter of course. Let's do this. You recommend a stock, I'll buy it, and we'll share the money together after we make money. Bai Hui is full of love for making money. For women, proven facts, even superstitions and divination, can become very important basis. Bai Hui doesn't care about any rational analysis. Lu Chang'an's suggestion this time is purely blind. Anyway, he made her make money, so Bai Hui trusts her. It was his suggestion. 2017 is almost over. If you invest, you won't be able to make much money in the short term. If by 2018, the heavenly stem is Wu and the earthly branch is Su, the historical reform movement of 1898 will be the year of 1898. This means that this year's luck lies in a word, change. Things that rose sharply in 2017 are at risk of falling sharply in 2018, such as Bitcoin. Don't touch it now. According to the gossip, fire luck is extremely strong in the year of 18, and fire combines with gold, and gold is financial situation. In other words, if you want to invest in cash in 2018, you will basically be out of luck. Stocks, bonds, funds, US dollars, gold, various currencies, P2P, this year, fickle people can make money, otherwise they will not. It's reliable. With your IQ, if you still want to be a rich little woman, just save money in the bank or buy a house. Lu Chang'an made a scientific analysis and it was reasonable. Bai Hui was a little confused, but she understood that Lu Chang'an was not optimistic about her prospects of making money by investing this year, so Bai Hui quickly hugged the doll in her hands tightly. If she could no longer be a rich woman, what was the point of living? If she is no longer a rich woman, then she will have no advantage compared to an Nuan. Okay, then I might buy a small house. Bai Hui thought for a while and saw that the tea in Lu Chang'an's cup was almost finished, so he quickly poured some more for him. A pot of tea should be enough for 2 people and 4 people. Cup or so. Bai Hui drank 1 cup by herself, and she decided to let Lu Chang'an drink 3 cups. He said he would finish his tea before leaving. I have something very important to ask you. It's the comic expo. I haven't decided what to wear yet. Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an with some embarrassment. Anyway, you don't wear much everyday clothes, so just wear what you usually wear and what you wear at the comic exhibition. Lu Chang'an originally wanted to say that the sexier the better for the sake of business prospects, but he still considered the little girl's face. Well, he is a kind person after all. I want to wear Peaceful Spring or Princess Yang Xiang, but I'm worried that some people will say I'm showing off my wealth. In fact, Heavenly Girl is pretty good and the price is not expensive. I also have some limited editions, which are too gorgeous and not suitable for dancing. Bai Hui sat next to Lu Chang'an and swiped some selfies on the screen of her mobile phone to show them to Lu Chang'an. The 2 dresses, Spring of Peace and Princess Yang Xiang, cost about 20,000 yuan, which was not cheap for Bai Hui, but Princess Yang Xiang it might be sold again, so Bai Hui plans to sell it while the price is high, and he doesn't want to wear it too many times in order to maintain its quality. Then it will be Heavenly Girl. Lu Chang'an frowned. This design is somewhat similar to what I plan to make. Hey, it seems that I have to change the color matching, so that an Nuan will not wear it and others will say it is Heavenly Girl. Knockoff model. Bai Hui turned to look at Lu Chang'an, and then looked at the photos on his phone. Lu Chang'an drank tea and got some new inspiration when he looked at the design and pattern of the teapot. You drink slowly. Bai Hui picked up the teapot and poured a full cup for Lu Chang'an. I'm leaving first, goodbye. Lu Chang'an watched Bai Hui leave aggressively and couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't expect that she would take a few steps and come back even more aggressively. While glaring at Lu Chang'an, he twisted the stupid doll that he had just left behind in his hand and threw it away. Throw it away and walk away. Women are like dogs, they will fall out when they say they will. I recommend a book called The Prodigal Son of the Ming Dynasty, written by a historical figure who is already fat and can be killed. Please give me a monthly vote. Readers who have not voted before can vote, or just click on the words monthly vote. Maybe there will be one? Another note, the stocks Bai Hui bought actually went up and down like this.